tour. Sarah Gregory put it all together and then wasn't able to be here, so thank you to her for putting it together. It takes an incredible amount of work for staff to put these together. It's almost like when you get ready for a big party and you spend 8 hours getting ready to look like you just threw everything on, but they've made it look easy, and it was a great tour. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde for making that tour memorable in several ways, to say the least, and by letting us see what the mule deer habitat and other efforts look like on a private ranch, for conscripting her family into providing a terrific barbecue and a chance to talk. And for me, it was a chance to see what restoration on sagebrush lands look like with the juniper encroachment. And especially it was a chance to really see how long it takes in these habitats on the east side of the state compared to what I'm used to on the west side of the state. And what you are able actually to get water on the landscape. Takes a long time. It takes a lot of partners and groups working on these things for years. But it was a remarkable chance to see what we got to see yesterday. So thank you to everybody who put that together, and especially to you. Thank you. With that, let's go to introductions of the rest of the commissioners. Vice Chair.
Okay, I am Becky Hatfield Hyde, and I do have to make one comment about yesterday because I can't help it. Such a good day. So thankful that so many of my friends and fellow commissioners and community could be on that tour of a part of the world that's really important and kind of emblematic of the sage steppe and what we need to do for restoration. But the big take home for me yesterday that I just have to say this morning is when we look at juniper that has come in since colonization, since my family showed up on the Oregon Trail, the level of juniper that is across our landscape that wasn't there before has so much of an impact of taking water on the site and limiting other biodiversity, like for all of the plants that our wildlife need. But the other point that really struck me that Tim DeBoot was talking about yesterday is if you think about just the upper Crooked River system, and if the juniper were removed, not the old growth juniper that we all love to look at, but these young invasive juniper, if they were removed, that is the potential for 300,000 acre feet of water. So if you love fish, you should be thinking about uplands. And what we do is we stare in beautiful riparian areas and wonder why we have not enough cold water refugia, not enough flow in the later season, in the summer. So if you can't appreciate the uplands because it would create more site-specific biodiversity for fish and wildlife, then you should put your climate change lens on and say the uplands matter. And in these dry systems, they matter a lot. And we looked at restoration projects that cost $2 million last year. And if you think about the Klamath Reclamation Project this year is getting $19 million for drought relief because they don't have enough water. 300,000 acre feet of water would not only help fish, but would also help farmers. We don't think about the uplands. We must think about the uplands. Climate change. Anyway, sorry for all of that moment, but I just couldn't help it. Okay, enough of that.
Well said, Commissioner. Mark Laupart, and I live in San
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, good morning. Partnerships, and what you can accomplish, landowners, federal, state agencies, including ODFW, all working together to accomplish all that.
Dallas Holder Freeze, Baker County, Oregon.
Dave Moldall, Portland, Oregon. Thank you for hosting us here in Redmond.
Yeah, Hugh Morrison, Portland, Oregon, and I'll just add from yesterday's tour, it really was a wonderful event. And one of the big takeaways for me was what's good for mule deer, it's good for sage grouse, good for cattle and grazing, good for water resources, good for fish. All of those things come together, and it's wonderful to see so many partners working together for restoration on a huge swath of landscape. Really tremendous efforts.
Director.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Debbie Colbert. I'm the Director of Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and just want to thank all of the ODFW staff that put together such an awesome tour, and all of our partners. And like many of you noted, we learned a lot yesterday. I think that even folks that live here learned something from the tour yesterday. It was phenomenal, and really demonstrates what you can achieve at a landscape scale with partnerships and relationships. Frankly, I don't think you can do it without those two ingredients. And I think yesterday really demonstrated that. So thank you to everyone who put that together.
Thank you. Michelle, could you introduce yourself and help us with logistics?
Good morning. Normally I would say let's keep these close to us, but I think until I can get the feedback resolved, I'm gonna have folks actually scoot their microphones further away today a little bit. Okay, so can you still hear me out there? So good morning, my name is Michelle Tate. I'm here today to provide support to the Commission and the Director for today's meeting. First, I want to thank the Redmond Grange for providing this beautiful facility for us to have our meeting today. One of the unique aspects about using these facilities is the people that are tasked with maintaining them and really taking care of them. The passion and the pride and the heart folks put forward is really impressive. Today, I'd like to ask for folks to be very mindful about beverages and liquids. And this is an old floor that they've been trying to maintain for many years and have done a fabulous job. And I'd like for us to give them the respect of being mindful of our beverages. I'd like to ask the folks online to please be understanding and patient with technology. Sometimes we do experience some unexpected connection issues. I'd also like to ask you to please keep your cameras and microphones muted until the chairman calls upon you. Commissioners, as you can tell, we have our old new digital sound system back. And a couple things I want to remind you folks about this is that when the red light is turned on, your microphone is hot and you're broadcasting. And also that we can only have 3 microphones turned on at a time. So when you're finished speaking, if you can go ahead and turn your microphone off. Lastly, there is not a Wi-Fi connection in the meeting room. So if you'd like to connect to Wi-Fi, you'll need to use your hotspots. And that's everything I have today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for putting this together for another meeting out of Salem. Just for today's meeting, I do want to mention that we may have we haven't seen the final list yet of who wants to testify, but we may have quite a few people. We hope to keep it to 3 minutes per person, as is usual. If it goes way long, we may have to cut it to 2 minutes. So just be thinking about that if you're planning to testify. I think we'll be able to do it with the 3 minutes. And with that, I'll ask the director to do the director's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Just a couple things for the director's report. Start off by flagging, especially for members of the public, that we do have a field report that we always prepare for the commission for each of their meetings, and they are definitely worth a read. And this one, just like so many before it, covers a ton of really great things, partnerships, everything from work we're doing on porcupines to doing wildlife crossing BioBlitz with high school students. It's just amazing to check out the breadth and impact of the work happening across the agency with its partners. For the director's report, I wanted to kind of just give it a shout out. First of all, many of you have heard in the press the detection of a single dead quagga mussel in Prineville area. And we continue to work with our partners. There's intensive monitoring happening in that area. But I just wanted to say, I cannot believe how amazing our invasive species team is. That there was a boat that was discovered with quagga mussel. Within 24 hours, we had traced it back to Prineville, mobilized the team that goes in and does the intensive monitoring. I mean, it was that fast. And so I just want to give a shout out to that team. They do amazing work every day. And I don't have to tell the folks here how important that work is and how devastating it would be for our wildlife and for our economics of our state. And so just a huge shout out for them. And the work is continuing to happen. I think that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service maybe has some divers out there even maybe this week. But it's just tremendous, the work they've done. I also wanted to share kind of hot off the presses. I'm on the Oregon Environmental Council Restoration Council, which is the new council that will be giving out the funds from the Monsanto settlement with the state of Oregon. So this is all interest earnings on the settlement, and a portion of those are dedicated for state agencies. And the council just did their first wave of grants to state agencies on Monday. And I'm really just so proud of the proposals that ODFW put together. And we were approved for $9.5 million out of 30. So just saying. But just tremendous proposals put together. We're working on restoring more than 700 acres in 3 priority watersheds. Many of those where they have brownfields or other historic contaminations in those watersheds. Going to advance investigations into sudden freshwater mussel die-offs, and also support the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission priorities for recovery of Pacific lamprey and freshwater mussels. So really proud of the proposals and the partnerships, because every single one of those projects has a long list of partners as always. So those are just a few things that I wanted to flag for you.
Well, congratulations and kudos, actually.
I'm pretty excited.
That's great.
So that still has to go to the September Emergency Board of the Legislature to approve the agency spending those funds. More to come. So unless there's any questions on that, I was going to go ahead and move to the next item in the director's report, which is the regular financial report. And we have Ken Loffing here to tell you how we're doing this so far this biennium.
Good morning. Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde, Commissioners, Director Colbert. For the record, Ken Loffing, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Pleased to be here this morning to deliver the agency's financial report. The financial report for the month ending May 31st, 2026 is in your commission packet. For that period, unrestricted cash finished with a balance of $74 million and restricted cash finished with a balance of $95.5 million for a total of $169.5 million in custody of state treasury. The unrestricted cash total does include the $17 million earmarked for rock creek hatchery. Those are insurance funds that we received in 2024. So true unrestricted cash minus insurance funds is right around $57 million. If we were paying attention from the April report, we went up about $10 million after going down about $10 million in the previous report. This is largely due to very good revenues in the month of May. May is our strongest licensed sales month with our controlled hunt application deadline. A couple stats there because I like numbers. We sold in the month of May 516,376 controlled hunting applications, including 88,738 on the last day. So apparently we like to wait until the last day. But just a tremendous sales month, and that's the primary reason for the bump in the unrestricted cash. Moving on now, for the 25-27 biennium, our agency expenditures and revenues are currently tracking as expected. Through May, we are 46% through the biennium, and expenditures total 35% of the legislatively approved expenditure limitation. And just quickly, revenues from the sale of recreational hunting and fishing licenses through May are tracking about 19% higher from a total revenue standpoint as compared to 2025. If we break it down from an individual product, total product sold standpoint, we're about 3% ahead of 2025 at the end of May. Just because I've been reporting on it once a month or so when I talk to you, we are seeing some trends show up with the license sales now. We're not quite halfway through, but we're seeing less sports packs being purchased overall as compared to last year, and more folks going to like individual kind of the a la carte method of purchasing fishing licenses, hunting licenses, like, not to be totally unexpected with our fee increase, but we are seeing that trend. But overall, revenues being generated from those sales are about what we projected. Okay, last, I'll just be really brief here because you're gonna hear a lot from me later today on 27-29 budget development. But I'll just state that since the last time we chatted in May with the budget brief, we've continued to work closely and meet with our stakeholders, continue to develop content, conduct outreach, and here we are today ready to present our 27-29 agency request budget to you all for approval later this morning. And I'll just state further process was once approved, we're going to be working fast and furious to get everything into the state's budget system, submitted to the governor. After that, the governor takes our agency request budget, uses that as a starting point to create the governor's recommended budget. That'll come out before the legislative session. And then, of course, during the 2027 legislative session, we'll be working on our legislatively adopted budget. So big step here today and a lot of process left. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
None, but I'm sure looking forward to hearing the board budget. Thank you, Ken. I just love that he could read that tiny phone. Like, I'm like, wow. All right, so next up under the director's report is the regular climate and ocean change policy report. And we're going to be joined today by Andy Lanier, the Marine Affairs Coordinator at the Department of Land and Conservation Development, and just really appreciate Andy joining us this morning. Commissioners, just as a reminder, this presentation continues highlighting existing state agency programs that will be foundational to implementing the governor's executive order on climate resilience. You've heard from Department of Ag on the native seed strategy, and yesterday you saw examples of how that strategy is already supporting resilience on the ground. We've also heard from the Department of Forestry on the 20-year landscape resiliency strategy, which is designed to strengthen resilience across our forest and rangeland ecosystems. And then today we're going to shift to our coastal and marine ecosystem. And Andy's going to talk us through the role of the Territorial Sea Plan and how it also contributes to building resilience along Oregon's coast. So Andy, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll hand it off to you. Andy, we're checking, but we're not hearing you right now. Andy, we're showing that you're unmuted on our side, but just wanted to let you know that we're not hearing you.
He's hearing it online, so it's my speakers here that's the issue.
Okay,
So, can we go ahead and take just like a 5-minute?
Andy, we're gonna take a couple minutes break, everybody, just to try to troubleshoot some speaker issues here in the room. So just sit tight or, take a quick trip to the restroom and we'll be back online shortly.
talk and see if we can, if this fixes it. Okay, Andy, try it again.
I think while we're waiting for the connection with Andy Lanier, we'll ask the two commissioners who went to the WAFLA meeting do their updates. And they just wanted to report back, and thank you to both of you for going to that. Commissioner Labhart and okay.
Thank you. No, it was really wonderful to be able to attend WAFA. And for those who aren't familiar with WAFA, that is a group that represents 23 states and Canadian provinces in the West. So it's a pretty substantial group. It's pretty impressive to see the level of leadership that attends those meetings. In essence, the director from each of the state agencies is there. There's good representation from many of the federal agencies that are involved in wildlife management, natural resource management in the West. So really an impressive group and a tremendous amount of really collaborative efforts that are going on. As I think about, what we'll talk about a little bit later here, the policy option package 101, and that no plan, do approach. There's certainly a tremendous amount of planning that goes on through WAFWA. They have kind of 5 primary initiatives around sagebrush, western fish, grasslands, wildlife connectivity, and wild sheep. So just a tremendous amount of collaborative work that's going on through WAFWA, and hearing about that and seeing the level of engagement and the efforts to try and get funding across boundaries to actually put many of these things into action is impressive. Again, it's great to see the level of commitment that everybody is bringing to those efforts. There were a couple of sessions that were specific to commissioners, which was very helpful for me as I don't get to say this for much longer, Sean told me, but still as a relatively new commissioner, to hear what's facing other states and you get thoughts and guidance from other commissioners about how to be effective in this role was really valuable. I will say, so there was a lot of discussion about positive things that are happening in states across the West, as well as challenges that people are focusing. And I guess for me, one of the real takeaways there is it feels like Oregon is in a very good place. Certainly, it's wonderful to be in the situation that we're in with this additional funding coming from the TLT and opportunities to expand the work of the department into areas that we haven't had very good funding for in the past. That's something that everybody was envious of. And I want to commend Commissioner Labhart because he, for those commissioners, gave a really good kind of summary of the history of what led to that and how we got to that great place. So I thank you for doing that, Commissioner Labhart. I would also say that it was really good to hear or to see the strong level of communication between the commission and the department in Oregon that maybe isn't the case everywhere. So it was really wonderful to be able to reflect on that. And again, the good position that we are in here. So then there was, for the commissioners, a bit of a facilitated discussion about common topics and that we're facing across the West. Not surprisingly, things like disease and predator issues were on that list, but also efforts to try and manage some of the legislative concepts that come through or the initiatives that come through and how we collectively work to respond to some of those things that may or may not be beneficial for wildlife and wildlife management across the West. And then a lot of discussions about public engagement and how we bring together folks with perhaps differing perspectives and views on things, on an issue, bring people together to hear from each other and hopefully come to a better outcome. So a lot of focus on that And I think we have some great examples of that here in Oregon, but good to hear and learn from other states about some ways that they have done that as well. So some really great discussions that we had. I guess one of the other things that I'll mention is there were a fair amount of discussion about evolving technology and how that is managed as we continue to see new tools that are available to hunters and anglers and to wildlife managers, but how we make sure we do that in a way that is responsible and maintains fair chase, across wildlife management in Oregon and beyond. So really, really beneficial conversations. And again, I will say that for me, the takeaway was, that we're in a really pretty good place here in Oregon. And I appreciate everyone who's helped us to get to that place, the department, all of the stakeholders that are here today and online, and then to my fellow commissioners. So that's great. I will say for myself personally, I had the opportunity to talk again with other commissioners and to leadership from other states about what people see as important in the role of commissioners. And certainly, no surprise to anyone, listening to varied perspectives with an open mind, certainly extremely important in the role of a commissioner. I think all of us here understand and work hard to make sure that happens. But another really important thought that came through is the importance of transparency. I mean, we all know that we're thinking hard about these issues, talking with a variety of interests, reading through all of the public comment that comes in. That may not always be evident because we don't have unlimited time to talk, and I know I'm talking for a little too long right now. But so it might not be obvious to everyone, how much thought we are putting into this. And so spending some time being transparent about our thoughts and deliberations, I think, is one really big takeaway from me from those conversations. And I appreciate all the folks that shared with me their experience as part of WAFWA. So it was great experience, and I look forward to hoping to go again in the future. And with that, I'll turn it to Commissioner Lapper.
Andy, can you go ahead and see if we fixed it?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me? I am speaking and I can see my mic moving.
Andy, go ahead and hold on for just a minute. Well, we're gonna let Commissioner Laphart speak and then we'll start thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I wanted to start off with a thank you to Chair Wall. And the reason I want to thank you is this is my 7th year attending WAFWA, and so I very much appreciate you allowing me to attend the WAFWA meetings. They've been hugely beneficial to me personally and professionally, so I thank you for allowing me to attend for 7 years. So I'm going to duplicate 2 of Commissioner Morrison's points because I want to add weight to what he said, because I think they're really important. We actually had 10 states commissioners show up, which is one of the largest turnouts that we've had for commissioners. So, and it was broadly all the way from Kansas to California showed up this time, and they usually don't show up. And so there was a commissioner from California there. We were asked to answer a series of questions, and 2 questions I thought were fairly important. What are the biggest success for your state and your agency during the last year? And of course, it was the TLT, the Transient Lodging Tax, and House Bill 4134. So I had the opportunity to speak to that on the second day of the session for about, half hour, 45 minutes. And I was pretty proud of doing that because I had the other states going, wow, how did you guys pull this off? And we pulled it off because of the people that are watching us today. We pulled it off because of the various interest groups that don't necessarily see eye to eye on issues coming together and saying, this is really good for Oregon. This is really good for our constituencies. This is something that is very, very powerful. And I want to recognize particularly Amy Patrick, who's in the room today. She was part of that coalition. Sristi from the Law Center and Danielle from Oregon Wild were pretty much the leaders. But the real key to the whole thing was Representative Ken Helm. He made this his priority because he's retiring from the legislature and pushed that effort forward. And as a result of that, many of you know this, but this is a game changer for our agency, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So I was really proud to talk about that. We were also asked to provide emergency challenges that we face as an agency. And one of the challenges that we brought up that the department is very aware of, and that's the widening divide between many hunters and agricultural producers, their perception of an overabundance of predators on the landscape. And so we had a chance to talk a little bit about that. Another emerging challenge is the possibility of the initiative petition IP 28, which would essentially eliminate hunting, fishing, trapping on the majority and majority of wildlife research in Oregon. So we don't know whether it's made the ballot yet or not, but it has been submitted. We also shared, as Commissioner Morrison said, the potential concerns each state had talked about this. I call it fair chase hunting, and the increased use of advanced technology that blur the lines between fair chase hunting and high-tech hunting and fishing techniques that are out there. There seems to be similar concerns across all the states, and we talked about potential options to address that and how tough it is for law enforcement to be able to administer some of this high-tech stuff that's going on. During the annual WAFLA Awards banquet, part of the effort is to recognize individuals or groups that have done outstanding work in fish and wildlife throughout the years. And we had the privilege of one of our own, Bruce McIntosh, who's a retired ODF&W employee, was awarded the Conservation Change Agent Award for his work in technology. So Bruce wasn't there because he didn't know he was getting the award, but we were pretty proud of this retired employee receiving that award and being recognized by the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. Last but definitely not least, I had several commissioners come up to me and say, "Where is Commissioner Hatfield Hyde? We miss her, and tell her hello for us."
Oh, there you
So,
go.
end of report.
And one quick question. Okay. I have a really quick question for you guys. And Commissioner Morrison will appreciate this because you were in this role, because you were at WAFLA when you were at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I was concerned that last year, the federal family, was not really showing up in the WAFLA forum. Is the federal family showing up at WAFLA now?
I would say yes. There were several representatives from NRCS there, some BLM, USGS, pretty good representation from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I think last year what we were seeing was just a lot of attention to travel from federal agencies. And this year there was a little more opportunity for many of our federal partners to attend. So yeah, at least from my perspective, and Commissioner Labhart, you may see it differently, but I felt like the federal family was pretty well represented this time.
Okay, I just want to say that's so important because what the states are trying to do when it marries with the feds is so critical when we're kind of in alignment across that. So good. Thank you guys for going. So cool.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add again for others who are listening in, great representation from the states, as Commissioner Labhart said, 10 states with commissioners there, some states that are not often there were there, pretty good federal representation. And then there's good representation from NGOs from across the spectrum too. So it was a well-attended event, and I'll give credit to Idaho Department of Fish and Game too. They were good hosts.
Okay, I think we are ready to go back to the director's report. Thank you both for attending WAFA and just sharing such really great reports from the conference. So Andy, we're gonna give this another try. Thank you for your patience. Let's go ahead and we can get started.
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. Chair Wall, Director Colbert. My name is Ann Lanier. I'm the Marine Affairs Coordinator for the Department of Land Conservation and Developments, and I'm pleased to be here with you this morning. I thought I would start with a little bit of background on myself. I am a graduate of Oregon's university education system. I do identify as a platypus since I have my undergraduate from University of Oregon with an emphasis in marine biology and a master's from Oregon State University and as a marine resource management graduate degree program. So I take the best of both schools moving forward, and I have been with the department since 2007 when I joined as a coastal management fellow and have since been working as a steward of Oregon's territorial sea plan for the state. My goal today is to provide a background for you on ocean management and the framework of management for the state, and an understanding of how the Oregon Territorial Sea Plan can help inform actions taken to respond to the Executive Order 2526 on the resilience of natural and working lands and waters of the state. To do that, though, I do need to give a little bit of background in the program that I work for, which is the Oregon Coastal Management Program. The U.S. Congress passed the Coastal Management Act in 1972. NOAA is the agency that administers the program, and they provide support and funding to states around the country that have approved coastal zone management programs. So while I work for the state, I am 100% federally funded by NOAA. The Coastal Management Program was approved in 1977. So we are approaching our 50th year, and we are excited about celebrating that with the rest of the state. And our program is administratively housed in the Department of Land Conservation and Development. We are a networked program, which means that that program includes our department, 10 other state agencies, 33 cities, and 7 county governments. So those jurisdictions that are coincident within Oregon's coastal management zone, which goes from the crest of the Coast Range out into the ocean 3 nautical miles. There are a couple of pillars really that guide our work. They are the Oregon Territorial Sea Plan and statewide land use plan and goals. And our program as a whole aims to protect coastal and ocean resources and ensure livable, resilient communities on the Oregon coast. So once a state has an improved coastal zone management program, it means that the policies and plans of the state that are officially adopted by the state and then forward and approved by NOAA are eligible for something called review by Federal Consistency Authority, which means that for federal actions or decisions that happen within our coastal zone or in an area that may have effects within our coastal zone, we can apply Oregon's plans and policies to those decisions. And through the networked nature of our program, that means that the work of our department scales down to the policies and plans of our local governments, as well as the administrative rules that are managed and maintained by our state agency partners. So it really is quite a unique structure in the country in that we have networked our local plans, policies, and agency administrative rules into something that we can use when decisions are made in our ocean and coastal areas. And that gives the state a lot of power in thinking about how it grows and it moves forward. So Oregon's land use planning system is based upon our statewide 19 land use planning goals. These goals fall under 4 different types. The first is process goals. So goals 1 and 2 guide all planning throughout the state. We have a number of resource goals that are aimed at preserving Oregon's natural resources. And we have a number of urban goals that ensure the efficient use of land for housing, transportation, and employment. The goals that are most near and dear to my heart are the coastal goals, and those are the last 4 statewide land use planning goals, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And they relate to the management of our estuaries, our beaches and dunes, beach access, and hazard mitigation, as well as ocean resources. And I do think that I have one of the best jobs in the state, and that I think of myself as a Goal 19 specialist. And it is one of my jobs to coordinate and steward our ocean resources in coordination with my fellow partner networked agencies. And the state has had a robust ocean policy framework for more than 30 years, almost going on 50 now. And Goal 19 has been on the books since 1977. It was modernized in 2000. And it sets the standard for sustainable long-term use of renewable resources. And it requires new uses to protect important marine habitats and ecological functions, as well as protecting other beneficial uses like areas of importance to fisheries, for marine transportation, for scenic enjoyment, and recreation. Right? When people go to our coast, they view our ocean, they view our marine systems, and many come away with a sense of awe about the place that I think of as home. So while Goal 19 is the foundation of our state land use planning framework, that goal was codified and put into law by the Oregon Ocean Resources Management Act, which put into statute the existing ocean management framework that we have today. It established the Oregon Territorial Sea Plan, which contains the specific policies that interpret Goal 19. It established Oregon's legislatively established advisory body for the stewardship of the Territorial Sea Plan, which is the Ocean Policy Advisory Council. And it recognizes and folds in the state agencies, authorities, and programs that relate to actions in the ocean so that they are consistent with that goal. The Territorial Sea Plan has many different parts. And actually just yesterday, my commission initiated rulemaking on parts 1 and 2. These are the only parts of the Territorial Sea Plan that they haven't been updated since they were originally adopted in 1994. And over the next 18 months, I will be working with the state, with the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, to make recommended amendments to those 2 chapters. But those 2 chapters are foundational for how the state makes decisions, how the state makes improvements to the plan, and it sets our guiding framework for thinking about work that the state may do along the lines of resilience. Parts 3, 4, and 5 of the Territorial Sea Plan are more topic specific, and they interpret Goal 19 as it may relate to the protection of our nearshore habitats, especially our rocky shores, as in evidenced in Part 3. They relate to the uses of the seafloor, so uses that occupy land like undersea fiber optics or power cables or infrastructure like disposal from our cities and counties that may take place out in the ocean. And Part 5 establishes a state policy about marine renewable energy. So the state is our guiding framework for how we think about any new potential use of the ocean, as well as the goals for our long-term stewardship. And I do want to recognize that when we talk about this resource, when we talk about this issue, we are talking about one of Oregon's, actually is Oregon's largest state-owned and manned water body. The Pacific Ocean is really the dominant force shaping Oregon's climate. It drives regional differences, seasonal weather, and year-to-year variability through its temperature, its storm tracks, and large-scale cycles like the El Nino Southern Oscillation cycles. And its influence is felt in everything from daily temperatures to long-term trends in precipitation, drought, and extreme events. The ocean is also showing signs of stress related to climate change challenges. The ocean itself has helped to buffer our state and the world from some of our worst impacts of climate change. The graphic, which was generated by the International Ocean Alliance on ocean acidification, highlights some of the ways that our ocean has performed services for us. But we are seeing signs of stress in waters that are less oxygenated, waters that are often warmer than they have been in the past, and in some cases, water that is more corrosive to the different organisms that depend upon calcium carbonate, the creation of their shells. And the state has shown that it has the capacity to lead and to respond to these changes, as evidenced by the Ocean Action Change Plan that was generated by the group formerly known as the Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Coordinating Council. Quite a mouthful, and I think that's the reason why that group has changed its name to the Oregon Ocean Change Council. But that group has led by thinking about how the state can understand these challenges, can potentially adapt and mitigate these challenges so that we can continue to gain the benefits and the ecological services that the ocean provides for us as communities on the coast. The challenges of our ocean are also evidenced by the fact that our recent state wildlife action plan includes many species and key habitats in the nearshore and estuarine region. Some of these places, aquatic vegetation beds, kelp forests, rocky shores, tide pools, they're recognized as some of the iconic places, but they are also incredibly important as nursery grounds for nearshore species. And as I was thinking about this presentation and thinking about what percentage of work our ocean may represent, it is significant. Nearly a quarter of all species in the State Wildlife Action Plan are represented in the nearshore, while even more than that are represented as species where we don't know enough to make a determination. This is important, and it's also understandable because the ocean is one of the most challenging places on the planet, especially the nearshore ocean, to make observations that are repeated, scientifically verifiable, and can help us to inform, basically, and to see and to clarify what is happening on our underwater habitats. So I do believe this represents a great opportunity for the state to move forward, to learn more about the needs of adaptation, mitigation, and resilience in these places. And in doing so, one of the things I did is look back to the Territorial Sea Plan. And this is the table of contents for the first chapter of the Territorial Sea Plan. And I just thought I would pull out explicitly some of the language from this that I think directly relates to resilience efforts and decision making. And so the next 4 bullets come from Section G, which provide the ocean management goals and policies. They are the interpretation of Goal 19 as evidenced in the Territorial Sea Plan. And I do apologize for the text on this slide. I'm not going to read it. But what this does mean is that it's the policy of the state of Oregon, all local, state, federal plans and programs and activities that affect the resources and uses of the Oregon Territorial Sea shall be developed, managed, and conducted to maintain and, where appropriate, restore the long-term benefits derived from Oregon's marine renewable resources. Those plans, programs, and activities also have to meet the requirements for the Territorial Sea Plan for inventory information and effects analysis. So new proposed actions in our ocean have to meet that balancing test of Goal 19. And we are directed to protect renewable marine resources from adverse effects of development in non-renewable resources. We are directed to protect the biological diversity of marine life and the functional integrity of the marine ecosystem and the important marine habitats. We are directed to protect areas of importance to fisheries, recognizing that our communities benefit from the incredible valuable resources and food that we gain from having the Pacific Ocean on our doorstep. The Territorial Sea Plan also highlights the ocean stewardship area. This is an area within which the state has identified that there are natural phenomena and human uses that can directly affect the resources and uses within Oregon's territorial sea. It include the continental margin seaward to the toe of the continental slope and the areas adjacent to the ocean in our nearshore. And it is the policy of the state that within that area, we encourage scientific research on our marine systems, ocean resources, and the oceanographic conditions that help to make the system what it is today and to help put in context ocean decisions that we make. So while the title on this slide may be slightly exaggerated, I really don't believe that it is too much. Oregon has some incredibly special marine habitats that the state has had investments in for the long term, as evidenced by places like Haystack Rock, which established Marine Garden as a response to community observations that the ecosystem was being impacted by visitation, basically being loved to death by trampling, by visitation in an area that's highly accessible to our public and close to our population centers. And while we have had places where we've invested for a long term, we also have places that we are newly investing. Coquille Point in Bandon is one example where the state has recently established a marine garden in response to the community's identified needs that were very similar and mirrored what happened at Cannon Beach many years ago. And marine gardens are just one example of a type of marine managed area that the state has invested in. And when the Ocean Policy Advisory Council and my commission acted to amend Part 3 of the Territorial Sea Plan in 2023, the state established 8 new areas. And that included marine gardens, marine conservation areas, and marine research areas. Additionally, recognizing that the state, at the advice of the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, established marine reserves and protected areas in 2012, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife continues to manage that program on behalf of the state. That is another conservation effort that was a balance between use and conservation long-term. And it was a compromise in our communities where there was a voice, a growing voice for conservation, while there was also a recognition that these areas and setting aside areas could have significant economic impacts to our coastal communities. But I think that these areas represent the best of what Oregon has to offer, and that our communities came together in the policy forum at the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and we agreed to move forward in a collaborative, coordinated manner. And the Territorial Sea Plan was the vehicle by which that conversation happened. And I think that is really one of the best that our state has offered in terms of a shared vision of the implementation of Goal 19. So moving to specific instances in our climate resilience executive order, you can see that the ocean is in that perspective. It is in the directive. And one of the first things to recognize is that the ocean is a working water body. As mentioned already, it is the largest state-owned and managed water body. So it has a significant role in the resilience of our coastal communities. And there is a recognition in the order that continued coordination and collaboration between some of the agencies that work on this topic is necessary to move forward. Increase the partnerships that can support the long-term resilience of nearshore resources in Oregon. As an example, the Oregon Ocean Science Trust, a relatively newly created entity, provides an opportunity for partnerships to be funded. And it provides an opportunity for additional research to be designated. Some of that research has included research on ocean acidification and hypoxia, nearshore keystone species, kelp forest and eelgrass habitats, and the review and adaptive management of our marine reserves. So those have been recent work and grants that have been provided by the Science Trust that go to support the implementation and the vision of our Goal 19 policy. Lastly, the state has been directed to continue to think about how it can generate globally competitive ocean-reliant products through sustainable practices. One of the ways that I think about this is supporting the Blue Economy Task Force that the legislature established last year. And I understand that that task force is just getting up and going, and the Ocean Policy Advisory Council does have a seat at that venue, like we as agencies also have a seat in order to help it provide advice and feedback as that group considers recommendations moving forward. Lastly, one of the other areas that the executive order identifies for the state to work on is in the conservation of lands and waters to act as resilience anchors, right? So the goal of implementing a 10% addition by 10 years, right? So agencies have been directed to protect, conserve, connect, and restore 10% of lands and waters in Oregon as compared to baseline conditions. Given my experience in the development of ocean policy in the state, I believe that the Territorial Sea Plan does support this type of activity. The Ocean Policy Advisory Council could be the right venue for this conversation to occur and to take place. And as a staff person, I look forward to working with my colleagues and partners at the department to consider how this should be interpreted, what our goals should be. Because it's not exactly known how we should be interpreting this guidance yet in our ocean. Does the 10% apply to the territorial sea as a starting point? Or do all waters of the state cumulatively add to this goal in perspective? That's just one example of the questions that I have when I look at this. And I'm just happy that the state has a policy framework and a place that it can coordinate these discussions. As I finish my remarks to you this morning, I do also want to highlight the close coordination and collaboration that I've had with staff in the marine program at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife over the many years. I've come to work closely and have friendships with your professional staff, and I have greatly benefited from the knowledge, experience, wisdom, and passion that they have for the stewardship of Oregon's ocean resources. And I look forward to continuing that relationship and coordinating with you all as Oregon sets a path towards resilience in our ocean waters. And with that, I will stop and answer any questions that the commission may have.
Go ahead, Commissioner Morrison.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that report and that overview of all the work that is being done. Thank you for your work on that. I guess I have a couple of questions, but one that strikes me is you talked about the impacts of a changing climate on the marine environment and beyond that too, and estuaries, et cetera. I'm wondering if there has been an evaluation, a consideration of how changes in ocean conditions might also affect, say, coastal forests beyond the aquatic environment itself.
That is a great question, Chair Wall and Commissioner Morrison. I personally am not as familiar with how the ocean climate has impacted forestry, although I would guide you to the 7th Oregon Climate Assessment that was generated by the state, which does highlight some of the specifics about the changes in patterns of precipitation that may come during different ocean cycles. Right, our coastal system and our nearshore system, they act in balance with what's happening in the atmosphere in the rest of the state. For example, there's coastal fog belt that often happens during the summer on the coast when there's a high pressure system in the valley. Or when we have strong El Niños, we have a likelihood of having more precipitation, but it comes at different times. Right? So while I'm not an expert in how that may impact the forest species that are further up in our terrestrial watersheds, I do know that there is likely an effect, but I'm not the expert in that, so I won't go any further than that in answering your question.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for putting you on the spot. It's not something that I would say I have looked into myself either, but it does seem to me like an important consideration going down the line. Chair Wall, may I ask a second question? So I'm curious too, you talked about the marine reserves, and you mentioned, considerations about economic impact. Has there been an evaluation of that on the economic impact of marine reserves on those coastal communities?
Yes, there have been, and my colleagues at the Marine Resource Program are the best ones to answer. But Tommy Swearingen, who is now no longer with the department, I think led the work on the social economic impacts of the marine system to coastal communities. And it is my understanding that it was hard to determine an economic effect of those areas because of many other confounding variables in the assessment of the system.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Andy, it's Mary Wall. I wanted to ask you a couple questions. Thank you for the report for starters. It was great to get the background and get the framework and an update on it. The research you talked about, I think, is really critical. So are the efforts on the new products and that sort of thing. I was anticipating coming into this morning that we would hear a little bit more on maybe on the resiliency anchors and the moving from research to connecting with the other agencies on actions and really being able to implement some of these things that will help us be more resilient. So could you talk just a little bit more about what we're actually going to do? We have a great framework, we have great research, we've done a lot on hypoxia. The kelp and eel habitats or eelgrass habitats are incredibly important. Could you talk about how you're taking that and helping us be more resilient in the face of climate change?
Chair Wall, thank you for the question. It was a great. I just got some feedback there. Apologies. Habitat complexity in the marine environment and structure in the marine environment is very important. And it is my understanding that due to some climate change impacts, like the die-off of sea stars, which were top predators in this system, the behavior of other invertebrates, which are grazers, so purple urchins as an example, their populations have become greater and they have had an impact on the aquatic vegetation community in the state. Right? And so there is evidence that restoration of structure, which is best represented through things like kelp forest habitats, it can be one of the most effective strategies at impacting resilience at a large scale in the ocean. But it is a challenge, and there are still questions that remain about the drivers and the ecosystem trophic relationships and cascades that are taking place. We have seen different responses in Oregon's territorial sea. Right? Some areas on the southern coast have had more of an impact and more of a loss of kelp than areas in northern parts of the territorial sea. So we still need to know and to understand more about these systems, I think, to better be able to strategize and respond in a way that is going to have benefits to those many different species and habitats that are identified in the State Wildlife Action Plan. So I think that's part of what needs to happen is a research agenda and prioritization could be a very important step that is supported by the Territorial Sea Plan. And I think it is also supported by Oregon's Ocean Policy Advisory Council.
Chair Wall, some of the things that I think about that kind of relate back to some of what you've seen on the ground. If you recall, a while back we did a tour on the coast and we talked about coastal squeeze and rising sea level and softening of that coastal interface, and I think that those are really kind of some of the on the ground things that we can continue to look at as a state to promote resiliency in the face of, flashier systems and rising sea levels. So So I would anticipate that those are some of the things that would be considered in the 10x10, that, you know, kind of the practical on the ground things that we can be doing. And then also some of the work that we're doing with our agricultural partners and other agencies on tide gates. You know, and so those are some of the things that come to my mind, Chair Wall, in terms of actions on the ground.
Thank you, and I think those are great examples of exactly what we should be doing and we are doing, and they've made great headway. I was just trying to make sure that I was just trying to see what the connections were being made and moving this research into implementation. I know it really helps, I just was looking for that, but thank you, that helps a lot. And Andy, thank you for your ongoing work on this for a lot of years.
Yes, thank you so much, Andy. And, you know, we are entering a new and exciting phase in terms of this work, partly because of the governor's executive order and really kind of, you know, pushing toward and thinking about this from the 10x10 and resiliency perspective. I love, this is going to be my new favorite phrase from Andy, is kind of working waters. I love that. You know, we think about working lands, and I love that. So really appreciate your presentation today, Andy. And then, you know, you'll see in our budget presentation, Andy makes a great point about the at-risk species and information needs. And that's why you see things like some of the specific earmarked dollars to go toward this part of the state in our budget proposal. So I think that's it for the director's report, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Andy. Oh.
Andy, before you leave, Andy, we do have one more question. Go ahead, Commissioner Spellbrink.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wall. Just a quick comment on the importance of the plan. I was involved for quite a while in a group in Newport, Oregon, FIND group, they called it, Fishermen Involved in Natural Energy. And for a while there, it looked like we were going to kind of get run over by a lot of groups chasing federal money, and they weren't, the group was both recreational and commercial fishermen. And so it's just the importance of having a plan, because like I say, look, for a while that like we were going to get edged out, as a user group, just by all the chasing the federal money on wave energy and offshore wind and all those things. Anyway, just the importance of the plan. Appreciate it.
Good point. Thank you. Excellent.
I just have one really quick question, and it kind of follows up on what Chair Wall was just asking about how, what is the boots on the ground result of this? And I think Director Colbert did a good job of kind of saying that, but this conserve 10%, just trying to wrap my head around where that's going and why, and just asking, just saying that, sometimes when you think conserve, you think exclude, but that example of like fixing the tide gates and helping those farming communities along the coast it could be included in that kind of thinking. Okay, good. All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. So next on your agenda is the Commission's consideration of the temporary rules. You'll see that there's 20 temporary rules in your packet. We have been some busy bees at the agency. Just kind of for your information, our agency does more rules annually than all of the other 13 natural resource agencies combined.
Really?
Yeah, it's significant. And so the packet that you see before you today, it really kind of, you always see our in-season fish management largely related to Columbia River. So 11 out of the 20 related to Columbia River activities. You also see a few in there related to responding to low flows. In some cases, like the Klamath, going to catch and release given low flows. In other parts of the state, going to removing bag limits in reservoirs that we do not anticipate doing very well. And so, adaptively managing our fisheries on the ground. And, again, similarly, adaptive management, you know, we were really pleased to be able to allow the 2 rods on the Willamette late in the season because the runs kind of turned out better than we originally thought. So just, I'm happy to answer any questions, but just, I think, you know, you just see this volume, and it really just represents kind of how much we have to adapt and manage in season across the state.
Director, thank you. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment and then a question. So on number 14, which enacts the thermal refuges, angling sanctuaries in the Columbia River, I just want to appreciate again that this department stepped up and created those sanctuaries that help the fish get up the river, have places where they can actually hold up and move up the Columbia. And in our materials for this month, there were also some discussions about sanctuaries and identifying those areas where fish need to hold up until the temperature is a little bit better so that they can migrate. And they're in other parts of the state. So appreciate that we have that start in the Columbia and that we are starting to develop more and more of those and identify where they need to be basically left alone for a little while so they can get up the rivers in other parts of the state. So I just wanted to mention that. And a quick question, if you happen to know the answer on this one, why closing Tanner Creek in the Columbia River, why that one only goes through the 15th of July? Do you know? I can find the answer later if that's easier.
I'm happy to see if John North has a quick answer for us. If John can come off of the stage.
Love these facilities.
Thank you, Chair Wall, for the question. That closure is because we've initiated a sockeye broodstock program at Bonneville Hatchery that could eventually lead to reintroductions at Wallowa Lake. And because sockeye are ESA listed, we didn't want to have a concentrated fishery as those fish come back to Bonneville Hatchery around the mouth of Tanner Creek. So that closure encompasses the return period for that run. So.
Yeah, I just want to thank the department for the Upper Klamath Lake area angling regulations this year. We are experiencing such low flows because of drought. And I also want to say that I appreciate the social media effort that went out to explain the need for that. And, you know, I'm like one of those people on Facebook, like Ancient Woman. But that is circling around on Facebook, those videos that you did about why this closure is happening. And I think that, you know, that is important, right? So people understand. So thank you.
Chair Wall, I was just gonna say something. I just wanted to add, excuse me, that I am really grateful that we can adaptively manage in years like this with such bad drought, and that as an agency we're able to potentially open up some opportunities as well as having to you know, be more careful in other places. But I also just want to acknowledge the public and the anglers who are having to adapt to these rules too, and really appreciate we are in very bad drought conditions in much of the state, and this is a way that we can come together and help resources that we do have. So I just want to say thank you also to all the anglers and recreationalists who are going to have to adapt to these rules as well.
Any more questions?
I move to ratify the 20 temporary rules set forth on the June 26, 2026 agenda.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to ratify the 20 temporary rules set forth on the June 26, 2026 agenda. And let's do a thumb vote on the school commissioners. Michelle, it looks unanimous on that one. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all the work that put those together to our staff. A lot of them. Let's move on to.
Yes.
I don't need to repeat that, do I, Michelle? There are no, other business items that I know of, unless you have any, Director, and so we will move on to public forum, and we have a fairly short public forum. So what I'd like to do today is do the public forum, do the minutes, and then we will take a quick break because the next item is pretty long, so, public forum. Small thing. First, we have Candy Yao, then David Moskowitz, and then Brian Ricks. So Candy, if you will come up, please. And Brian, if you are in the room and would like to come up at the same time, we can just go through the three of you. Bar, and when it's red, you're on.
Okay, how's that? Much better. Is that a little too echoey? Do I back up?
Yeah, push the weight away from you. And then you can push the top away from you.
There we go. Is that better? Yes, okay. So yes, thank you for having me today. My name is Candy Yao, and I am the new Oregon Director for the Mule Deer Foundation as well as Black Deer Foundation. Oregon has been void from much, I don't know what you call. We haven't had Mule Deer Foundation much in the last 6 years, basically since Ken Hand was here. We did have a gentleman come in and he was trying to take on both Oregon and Washington. It was a bit much. It didn't work out. So I was hired in December and I absolutely love it. Anybody that knows me knows my passion for hunting and wildlife. So, but I started with one chapter in the state of Oregon. We currently have 6 and I'm crossing my fingers for 6 more before the end of the year. So, our statement for the Mule Deer Foundation is the vanishing icon of the West. And when I first read that, I almost came to tears. And so that moment, decided that not only am I the voice of mule deer in Oregon, but I want to change that statement. And I think working with ODFW, all of our other conservation groups, our hunters, anybody that's passionate about our wildlife, that we can do that in the state of Oregon. I truly believe that. What we saw yesterday was amazing. So I've done a lot of those projects on our ranches in the past. Obviously, I served for 2 terms on access and habitat. So I've seen a lot of tours. I've seen a lot of really cool stuff. And I'm not just saying that because she's sitting here, but hands down the best tour I've ever seen. So that was amazing. If we could get more of that, and I know it costs money, and so that's what my job is to grow chapters, raise money for the Mule Deer Foundation, work with our other conservation groups, work with you, and I truly believe we can bring that all back. I think that's about it. I think the last thing I would say is God has given us our wildlife and he made it very clear that it's our job to take care of them. And I plan on doing my part and working with you to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Candy. We will go then to David Moskowitz, and I believe he's online. Is he showing up there, Michelle? He is. Oh, okay. Dave, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me at all?
Yes. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, thank you very much. And I really appreciate this opportunity to speak virtually. I'm getting a big echo. I'm sorry. Are you getting that?
No, and we were turning off the extra microphone. We just turned off the extra microphone. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm hoping to talk about, I am going to talk about steelhead today. The current forecast is a little bit better than last year's, but there's been a lot of volatility in the department's predictions lately, and I think it's troubling and shows some signs of weakness in the modeling. And I'm still getting the echo, so that's what my pause is. I'm really sorry. But if you look at the current 10-year average and compare it to a more productive time from 2000 to 2010, that 10-year average, we have lost nearly 2/3 of wild steelhead abundance in that period. For instance, the average, over that 10 years was 118,200 wild steelhead, and now we're at just over 40,000 wild steelhead in the current 10-year average. We need to continue to look for every opportunity to increase steelhead abundance and productivity. And there's some very specific things we could do right now. There's many things that are very difficult to change, like dam operations. But what we can do is lessen the angler impact on wild steelhead. Right now, the steelhead that return to the Deschutes and Grand Ronde, anglers potentially encounter almost every wild steelhead, and in most cases, more than 50% of them. The Deschutes has a pretty good strategy for opening and closing the steelhead based on abundance. But we are managing very close to the bone on the critical threshold. To make sure I get everything in, because you guys know that I'm typically going over my 3 minutes, which I apologize for. We should eliminate the use of bait on the John Day River. The rationale was that because there were hatchery steelhead coming back to the John Day, you need to give anglers a chance to remove those hatchery fish. That spray rate has reduced dramatically. And so now you have anglers will sort through dozens of wild fish before they catch a hatchery fish. You have time to adopt a rule to eliminate the use of bait in the John Day River, and we urge the staff to look at that. The same is true for the Grand Ronde, where you can use bait, where there's also a 5 hatchery fish per day limit in the recreational fishery.
Dave, I'm gonna
And
have
we
to ask
stopped
you to
those-
wrap up if you will, please. You did
Okay.
go- Yeah,
I did submit written testimony, which details some of these things. But I also want to really thank you for again, as Chair Wall mentioned, the cold water refugia is a critical help for the Columbia Basin steelhead during their migration. Really appreciate it again this time. And I hope you weren't hearing the echo that I was hearing while I was testifying. Thank you very much.
thank you, Dave, and we did not hear the echo, so appreciate your testimony. And we will go then to our minutes for the last 2 meetings and ask if there are any questions or revisions commissioners want to make to those. Oh.
Do we want to do?
Did Brian Ricks, is he here? We checked earlier, but, okay, thank you. Let's go ahead with the minutes then. Commissioners, are there questions or revisions? And we're looking at both April 24th and May 15th minutes. Seeing none, if I could have a motion on those 2, please?
I can do that. I move to approve the April 24th and May 15th, 2026 minute meetings and with continued authority to correct grammar and punctuation.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve both April 24 and May 15th, 2026 meeting minutes as was just read it into the record. Let's do a thumb vote on this one, if you will, please. And Michelle, it's unanimous, so that one is approved. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll move to agenda item B, which is the budget, and it will be a bit longer than some of our other items this morning. Thank you.
We're all recovered.
Let me know when you find out.
I have kids with a friend of mine, in Pendleton for like their Jamboree, it's a music fest.
Cool.
That's what it's called. The headliner's Turnpike Troubadours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right? Yeah. You live that.
It's always teed up. He's got all those teed. Yeah, because she went by him. He's what he's putting on. Yeah, yeah. Do you? I mean, this is the
Somewhere. I know. You know, I did.
Oh, I remember that one. I was like,
They reached out and yeah, we'll do that. Let's
Right, yeah. Yeah.
It's like our rules, like where else you fix them. concept is we make reference. If say, we're family, I got attacked, we have a rule. I can skip
Why'd she? Oh, right. Oh, no, no, no. No. Oh. Oh, that's right. And then she then forgot his name.
He was a quarterback.
She just thought they might be good. Yeah. Yeah.
You're not burning ozone.
I know it.
I have, yeah. Meeting that we went to in Seven Partners.
It seems like that was
Was there powerful or electrical?
Just, usual chaos. Oh, are you still tagging to the Hunter Ed grant in your timesheets? Because I don't see your timesheets anymore. Because I would like you to, because you have some time for June you can tag.
Yeah.
So can you keep tagging?
Yeah.
Like, just
I think I did that.
for June tag, okay.
So touch base with Lynn and she's here and it was fine. So it's in, yeah.
Something to do
I don't know what. Yeah.
Are you doing like the whole transition thing?
Well, it's working, it's going, and the people, like the 4 people whose duties are changing, they're signing their PDs, working on signing their PDs. So I expect we'll get an announcement out in a couple weeks. But I'm on vacation the week of July 6th, so we might wait until after that because we have some other things. In fact, I'm working on the inside page.
So do you have your mic on because they can hear Michelle's voice?
Oh,
we've had the presentation, I think what we should do is have people ask questions, because there will be a lot of questions. Ask the questions you need to ask before we hear from the public. Then we'll hear from the public, and then we'll have more questions and discussion from the commission, and then we'll have each commissioner talk a little bit about any proposed changes or additions or whatever at the end. So let's go to presentation first, and then we'll have questions. And we do have 19 people at least signed up for testimony, so we will keep it to 3. We will go ahead with 3 minutes, but we really ask that people be ready to keep their comments to the 3 minutes, if you will. So go ahead, staff.
Thank you. Chair Wall. Chair Wall. Okay. Thank you, Chair Wall, Vice Chair Hatfield, Hyde, Commissioners, Director Colbert, for the record, Ken Loffing, I'm the Chief Operating Officer, for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm excited to be here today, to present the department's 2027-2029 agency request budget. We have a lot to cover today, as Chair Wall mentioned, so I'm going to jump right into it. Okay. There you go. Thank you. So to start things off today, I wanted to start with a timeline. I'll have this on the screen as I talk through some details to remind folks of the process. And it's a long process, a lot of work from people to get us where we are here today. The process began in earnest about 6 months ago as we began working with our division administrators, region managers, reviewing expenditures and revenues, compiling draft policy option package concepts, and doing a variety of preliminary work and engagement with stakeholders on the budget. The building out of the budget occurred over the last 6 months period, including 2 public budget open house meetings, stakeholder feedback, adherence to budget instructions from the Department of Administrative Services Chief Financial Office, the Governor's Office, regular check-ins with the DAS CFO, so I'm going to use some acronyms, but DAS, Department of Administrative Services Chief Financial Office, DAS CFO, and the Governor's Office. Policy option package review, incremental approval, and incorporation of all of those details into the document that is the agency request budget that's before you today. I'm leading with this, not just to highlight how much work it is, what it is, but also to recognize that work from a lot of folks that are in this room, our division administrators, budget team, stakeholder feedback. A lot goes into this. And I think that's important to recognize. I also think it's important to recognize the process, and the process is important to lead us to where we are today. And before I move on to the next slide, I just want a little background just for you all, a little budget 101, and just ask the question, what is the agency request budget? And I'm not asking you, I'll tell you. ARB, or Agency Request Budget, is a large, highly detailed, and complex document that describes the department's proposed finances for the 27-29 biennium. Budget details are entered into the state's budget system and are submitted to the Governor and Department of Administrative Services Chief Financial Office by August 31st of this year, for them to utilize as a starting point for building the Governor's recommended budget. Key components of the budget include agency expenditures, revenue, and the staff that will perform the work of the agency. For following along today in the presentation, the ARB materials are provided in your commission packet. Attachment 2 provides the estimated expenditures and revenues for the 27-29 ARB, which includes the investments that are summarized in our proposed policy option packages. Attachment 3 provides a list of all of our policy option packages, along with the detailed narrative descriptions of each package. Also required as a part of the agency request budget are department reduction items totaling 10% of allocations for each fund type. These reduction options are captured in attachment 4. These reduction options are not proposed reductions, rather are options that are included with our agency request budget submission that may be utilized by the governor or the legislature in the development of their budgets at a later date if there are revenue challenges at the statewide level. Now, for a budget presentation, any presentation, really the best place to start is with our mission. Mission is to protect and enhance Oregon's fish and wildlife and their habitats for use and enjoyment by present and future generations. It's a great mission. We all love it, and everything ties back to this. This is what we do day in and day out, and this mission is the backbone of how we approach budget development. Seeking to support this mission as effectively as possible with the resources and budgetary constructs that are available to us. I believe our budget and the numbers within our budget tell a story, and that story is about how we will go about funding our mission critical work in the 27-29 budget. And with that mission in mind, we built our budget in 27-29 with intention. Intention through Executive Order 25-26 to advance the resiliency of species, lands, and waters, to anticipate climate impacts and implement landscape scale forward-thinking solutions, to build on working land partnerships, service to all who live and recreate in Oregon, and to leverage our No Plan U framework for success. And last but not least is a process that is grounded in collaboration. Our relationships, as we've heard many times yesterday and today, are key to our success, and this collaboration was an important part of the budget development process. On that, our intentional approach to collaboration through the budget building process was done through 2 formal budget open house meetings, where the department was able to share information related to our revenues, specific instructions and limitations, talk through key concepts, and receive feedback in real time and through online forums on our budget concepts. All the information related to these public open house meetings are posted online on our budget webpage and include recordings of those meetings, slide decks, and other information pertaining to the 27-29 budget. In addition to the formal open house meetings, we have regular check-ins with stakeholders, phone calls, numerous one-on-one conversations throughout budget development. All written comments received through the online form or through the commission agenda item comment process are included in your exhibit packet in attachment 6.
Commissioners, I also want to note that, and I think largely because of House Bill 4134, I would say that we had a record level of engagement on our budget building process this biennium, for this upcoming biennium. And we had a lot of press coverage around our budget meetings, and so I feel like there was even more coverage on how we were building the budget and engagement broadly with Oregonians. And then just so many organizations that we work with that were kind of at the table and really directly involved, who represent hundreds of thousands of Oregonians as we build our budget. So really had a banner year for participation.
Thanks, Debbie. Also, as we've gone over before in previous conversations, we had budget instructions that we had to follow for development of the 27-29 budget. Those budget instructions are delivered to us from the governor and through the DASH Chief Financial Office. And those budget instructions in general were that general fund and lottery fund packages must be self-funded or budget neutral, meaning if we were going to put something up, a policy option package, and I'll explain on the next slide what all this is, that would have to come from existing resources or existing revenues. We couldn't go to the legislature and ask for more. Additionally, proposed investments for other funds or federal funds also had to be budget neutral, meaning that we had to already have some revenue to fund what our package is requesting available to do that work. There's also a focus on maintaining our core programs and customer service. And the governor's pre-approval process was very similar to the 25-27 budget instructions. And I mentioned, as I displayed on the first slide with the timeline, included incremental steps where we had to run things by our DASH Chief Financial Office and actually get approval for our policy option package to include them in our budget. With that, I'll get into the fun stuff. So on your screen, you'll see the budgetary numbers broken down by fund type that summarize our agency request budget, which is the third column. Also displayed for context are the 25-27 legislatively adopted budget figures and our 27-29 current service level budget figures. These figures are included for reference and to provide some context for how we got to the agency request budget and what those numbers mean. Starting on the left, the 25-27 legislatively adopted budget is a starting point for the development of the 27-29 budget. The 25-27 budget figures include previously approved programs and positions and other adjustments that have been approved and incorporated into the agency's budget. The current service level budget, on the next column over, is the forecasted cost for all those current programs and positions in the agency moving forward to the next triennium with inflation, price list increases, and some other budgetary adjustments made by DAS. For the 27-29 current service level budget, or CSL, due to inflationary increases, we see a slight increase in most fund types as we move from 25-27 LAB to 27-29 CSL. There's one notable exception, which is general fund. The current service level budget also includes the removal of one-time or expiring programs or payments from the budget. For 27-29, most notably, this includes the removal of $10 million in general fund for the private force accord grant program, which was approved one time in the 25-27 budget, legislatively adopted budget during the 25 legislative session. Also for general fund, I want to note that during the 2026 legislative session, we worked with our legislative fiscal office and the Oregon State Police to get the $3.1 million in general fund of anti-poaching funds that ODFW received in our budget and then paid the OSP through a special payment process. We worked with those groups to move that funding from ODFW's budget to OSP's budget. This was really a technical adjustment for efficiency and to improve just the budgeting exercise for OSP and ODFW. So in short, the current service level numbers shown in the second slide do not include the $10 million general fund payment for PFA or the $3.1 million OSP anti-poaching money. This is why we see that general fund number go down. Now, to get to the agency request budget from the current service level budget, we added items that are new, which come in the form of policy option packages. Policy option packages are used for new investments. These could be new revenues to do new things, or could be packages for utilizing existing resources in a different manner. Included in the 27-29 agency request budget are 18 policy option packages that add new investments to the agency's budget. These were developed consistent with agency budget instructions, focused on advancing species resiliency, connecting Oregonians, build upon our successful framework of collaboration and partnerships, forward thinking, and invest in sustainable infrastructure. These new investments are added to the current service level numbers to generate the 27-29 agency requested budget. In sum, policy option packages add $199 million to our current service level budget. And when you add in other inflationary adjustments that go into the current service level development, our 27-29 agency request budget is about $225 million higher than the 25-27 legislatively adopted budget. We will be going over each policy option package individually in the coming slides, but wanted to provide some context around this increase. $65 million is associated with POPs 101 through 104, which are POPs associated with House Bill 4134. $3 million of this increase are from POPs that utilize other fund revenues. Utilize other fund revenues from a variety of sources where available. And then a big chunk of the increase, $1.1 million, are associated with capital infrastructure. We have several capital investment packages that build upon prior efforts to improve hatchery resiliency of the state's hatchery system, provide sustainable infrastructure for our staff, and to build sustainable hatchery capacity in the Umpqua and Klamath basins. For the first $68 million I mentioned, if approved, will be permanently incorporated into our budget. The capital investments are really temporary investments that will eventually expire and go away after those projects are completed. Now also for what's not included in our agency request budget. As mentioned, the $10 million in general fund APFA grant program was removed. And we will be working closely with our governor's office on strategies to get this included into our budget package. But the general fund pop for this would not be revenue neutral, therefore is not currently in our agency request budget. It's unknown how or if this will move forward, but we are aware, as is the governor's office, on the priority for this program. Also not included, as Debbie mentioned this morning, is the funding for the Monsanto settlement fund. Funding, as Debbie mentioned, will be approved for that through an interlegislative days process in September, and we'll follow a different budget track for incorporation of that funding into our budget. So just wanted to note, even though that's approved, that's not included in the figures. The remainder of our presentation is going to focus on those details, the exciting details of our policy option packages. And to kick things off, I'll hand things over to Sean. Go over details of House Bill 4134.
Commissioners, for the record, Sean Clements, Deputy Director of the Department. And I'll try and match Ken's energy here. I also am excited. We're talking about some investments we're getting. And it's hard to think about, it was just 3 short months ago that the governor signed this bill, which really was a historic advancement for conservation in Oregon. And you think about the broad coalition that came together to support this bill, like the partners that we have, many of whom were on the jury today, as well as the legislators. It was kind of a once in a career opportunity. So we're going to step through the investments that the department's proposing here. And these investments were built based on conversations with those partners through the months of late March, early April, and continuing on until recently. So, just diving in. You recall House Bill 4134 increased the state's transient lottery tax by 1.25%. Investments went to a number of locations in the state government. Oregon Department of Agriculture got funding for the Wolf Livestock Preservation Fund, permanent funding for that, as well as funding for the Oregon Invasive Species Council, which, when you think about our recent detection of quagga, is really timely. That's funding that will help improve the monitoring and improve the response. Department of Justice and Oregon State Police also have funding included in there for permanent funding for the anti-poaching program. And then the Oregon Conservation Corps also has 0.1%, which is really dedicated to improving wildfire resilience to the interface. But then for ODFW, there's 4 categories of funding, which are kind of outlined here. Each of these represents a policy option package that we're going to talk about in more detail. There's one associated with wildlife connectivity, which will amount to about $3.1 billion per biennia. And these are all going to be indexed to inflation. License hotel routes goes up, revenue will also grow. There's another package associated with the Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund, again, initially was about $3.1 million in revenue. Wildlife stewardship, about $1.2 million in revenue. And then the big one is recovering Oregon's wildlife, which initially is about $55.7 million. I'm going to step through each of these. The first package, Prop 102, is wildlife stewardship. This package is really about how the Oregon Oregonians and wildlife live together, and this package continues a legacy that started several years ago with Al Salinger and policy action package this commission has seen over the past 50 biennia. It's being built in the legislature, and now it's incorporated in House Bill 4134. And we really stayed true to those initial policy action packages and commitments that were made during the legislative session. What you see here is wildlife rehabs. These are folks that are on the front line of interfacing with the public, taking in sick or injured wildlife and rehabbing them. It's small amount of grant funding permanently going forward, $200,000. In this first biennial, we're proposing to add an additional $30,000 for the carryover between January 1 and July and June 30th next year. And additionally, if we have any vacancy savings during that first period after July 1, we're proposing to put that into this grant program too. So the initial amount will be a little higher. And there's going to be conversations with each of the facilities about some of these side ordinance programs. I love that.
Bring in the energy.
It might. I don't know if you all saw that during COVID times. There was that YouTube video that went around of that individual in whose kid came in the door behind him. So it feels a bit like that. So the second part of this package is investment in 3 urban biologists. These are folks who are working out urban areas and we're proposing to place them in the Willamette Valley, 2 in Portland area, 1 in Adair, Service, Salem, Corvallis, and Eugene. These will work in our urban areas to encourage stewardship, address conflict, and foster and work on outreach. We recognize and we've heard that there's the need for this throughout the state as well, not just in the valley. And one of the things that we really need about these positions is the materials they create will be available for use throughout the state for other biologists to do that stewardship and outreach. A third component here is investment in a wolf biologist, which we're proposing to place in Klamath Basin. That will really increase our capacity there as that's one of the leading edges we're seeing in terms of increasing conflict. This will give us additional resources in that area. And what it will also do is free up our current wolf biologists based in Central Point to spend more time west of the Cascades. So it should really increase our capacity to work in this area. And then a fourth component is outreach and education, which is one of the smallest components that's really going to be important to developing those outreach materials initially. The second package I want to talk about is around wildlife connectivity, which again is really straightforward. It's about supporting actions that increase the connectivity of habitats so that species can meet all their life history needs. This one, relatively straightforward. We're proposing to put 60% of it into the hands of our partners to do partner-implemented connectivity projects. And these could take a range of forms. It could be wildlife crossings, it could be habitat projects like we saw yesterday that improve connectivity, it could be virtual fencing, a whole range of things that could qualify here. We're proposing to put 40% of it into ODFW-led projects. Again, similar kinds of projects will be eligible. All of these we're expecting to be leveraged significant amounts of federal funding. And then the third component here is really supporting a state wildlife transportation advisory committee, which was set up in the last legislative session. And the intent of that committee is really to ensure that ODFW, ODOT, and all our partners who are interested in wildlife crossings are aligned in what the priorities are in the state. And that we're rowing in the same direction and using that combined energy to leverage federal dollars. So a small amount facilitates that committee meeting. The third policy action package we want to talk about is associated with Prop 104, the Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund. This is really just about continuing the great work that fund is doing already. Pretty straightforward policy option package again. 2.8 million of that going into the grant program itself, along with 300,000 of the carryover from the first 6 months of the year next year, and then grant support for our fantastic administrative program. And you're going to see some of the great work that program does this afternoon, and I think you've seen it previously. I don't need to talk about how valuable that program is. And it really fills this kind of unique niche in terms of grant programs in Oregon. And then we're going to spend a bit of time on Prop 101. This is around the Oregon's wildlife. It's intended to support implementation of the state's wildlife action plan, which you recall last year, you all adopted the state's wildlife action plan, which is approved by the federal government. It does this by investing in agency capacity and making immediate investments on the ground around increasing our knowledge, increasing our ability to plan, put that knowledge to action, and then doing on-the-ground actions, as well as investing in some of these landscape scale projects in each eco region. We'll talk more about these in detail. And then also setting the agency up to support all of this infrastructure and these new actions. So we just wanted to show this so you get a breakdown of how some of that funding is being spent. We're going to dive into detail about each of these buckets. So again, the Recovering Oregon's Wildlife is really about implementing the SWAP, which is Oregon's blueprint for conservation. It's about keeping common species common and increasing the abundance and distribution of species, at-risk species. And the recipe for doing that is not rocket science. It's the same recipe that we've been using through funding from Oregon's hunters and anglers for generations. It's centered around starting with, it's what we call the no-5-year framework. No being that we have the information to understand species status, so we know what the limiting factors are, we know what the habitat is like, and we know something about restoration effectiveness. It's all the things that you saw on the tour yesterday. And our knowledge is constantly increasing, and we're doing better at finding things on the ground. And then it's about taking that information and putting it into a plan, an effective plan, so that you know where your priorities are and what you have to do to address things to those priorities. And then it's also about supporting the implementation of the plan. When you think about projects that go on the ground, there's all the permitting that has to be done, the contracting, so you need the infrastructure to make that happen. And then ultimately it's about doing actions on the ground that are going to improve conditions for our species. monitoring, restoration, addressing pollutants through the Monsanto program we just heard about, mitigating development. It can even be things like translocating species and propagating. It's a whole range of actions here, but regardless, we have this recipe for success. We've seen it in action with our elk populations in the state. We've seen it delist more species, on the brink of delisting code. So many success stories in Oregon through this recipe. So just diving into some of the details of these investments, I want to start with the know side of things, which is building our knowledge base. One of the biggest investments you see here is in boots on the ground wildlife diversity biologists. We had Carly on the tour yesterday, you met Jay down at Met earlier this year. We got Susan Barnes currently in the Walker area. We just added a fourth wildlife diversity biologist, Robert Brown, who you're all familiar with, on the brand. But that, until now, that was our extent of our coverage statewide. And those folks are doing incredible work trying to cover the state. But what this package allows us to do is build out and address some of those geographical gaps we're going to have. So we're proposing 26 new wildlife diversity biologists, and that will ensure that every watershed district in the state has an NRS 3 and 2 NRS 2s. And those folks will really be the boots on the ground for collecting data about these species, understanding what's ailing them, and how they put projects in place to address them. Some of the other things that fall into this bucket of work is on the ground capacity for our state non-game native fish. We've got several endemic populations around the state, a lot of them on the east side here, a lot in the Klamath Basin. And we've been really successful at recovering a lot of those populations. We were the first state to delist a fish, and then we went on to 3 more times. So a lot of success, and we want to invest in that so that we'll see 2 FTE put into that program to really supercharge it. And the other thing we heard is that as we invest in this increased capacity, we need a framework to understand like what are we going to monitor, how are we going to monitor, where are we going to monitor. We've got several hundred species here, so you need to build an open framework for that monitoring. You also need to be able to put that data somewhere where it can be easily accessed and analyzed. And so just thinking about being thoughtful about that, we included a contract for long-term monitoring design, and that will really be developing a framework for the state to be about what are we going to monitor, what are we going to research, and where are we going to, how are we going to manage all that data. So this will be a third-party contract that we laid out in planning, and that will really inform where we go in the subsequent planning budget for this too. And then, in addition to all that, while we're setting up agency capacity and building this long-term monitoring frame, we want to make some immediate investments, working with our partners. If we can fill some data gaps immediately, it will set us years ahead of taking actions to recover those species. So we particularly focused on species of candidates for ESA listing. So you see a range here from Wilson's Phalarope, Vespa sparrow, tree vole, etc. These are all places where we're going to work with partners who are already doing work on the ground, whether it's Bird Alliance, whether it's Oregon State University, USGS. These will be fundings that flow through ODFW to get data on these species. So we're pretty excited about these investments. So as a package, we're building agency capacity, but we're also being thoughtful about putting money on the ground immediately to try and get some improved knowledge there. On the planning side, this is something we heard loud and clear from both partners and internally, that we need to have some statewide specialists for these species. So we're proposing a statewide specialist based in Salem for birds, one for birds, and then one for mammals and bats. These specialists will really serve our wildlife diversity biologists in developing monitoring plans, advising on best practices. They'll work with our habitat biologists to advise on best practices for habitat restoration. And they'll also work with our agency partners, Fish and Wildlife Service and others, as ESA listings come up, or with our federal partners, federal land management partner agencies, in terms of thinking about habitat improvements on federal lands. And they'll also work with our external stakeholder partners as well. So really critical positions. We're going to talk more about beaver today, but and we saw some examples yesterday of the kind of work we're hoping to see on the state. What we're proposing here is to invest in a position within IDFW that will really be one of the spare in terms of implementing our beaver action making sure that the whole agency is aligned around that, and then working with partners to also implement it. So exciting investment there. We'll talk more about some of the on-the-ground investments associated with that plan as well. And then GIS, it's kind of the foundation of a lot of the work we do these days. GIS is helpful for mapping habitats. You saw some of those maps yesterday. Priority wildlife connectivity areas, for example. It's also helpful for analyzing connectivity and distribution, and then also for tracking SWOT outcomes. We want to know how are we doing on a lot of these investments. So investment there. Now, one you might not think about is investment in an archaeologist. So we heard about some of the archaeology surveys that were done yesterday. It's a kind of a requirement for a lot of the restoration we do these days. We want to be mindful of our cultural resources, and we want to ensure that our restoration isn't impacting those. But it can be a bottleneck to getting work done. There's very few companies that provide this service. The waiting period is long and it's quite expensive. So by having an in-house capacity, we can really boost our ability to do that in-house, reduce some of those timelines, and get work done quickly. So something you might not think about, but also a really necessary investment. And then just like with the no bucket, we want to make some immediate investments in planning to get things going. One place we're proposing to do that is around Columbia shocktail grouse. This is a species that was extirpated in Oregon because of land use changes, and we would like to see a reintroduction get going here at some point. So we're proposing to work with OSU on what that plan might look like, where a reintroduction might be most successful, where the donor stock might be. And there's actually a reintroduction going on in Washington at this point, so exciting development there. And then similarly, we wanted to invest in some planning and analysis to support kid fox habitat restoration. So this is southeast Oregon, a lot of work going on there around kid fox, and this will really help with the planning phase. And then there's the doing. This is perhaps one of the biggest buckets, and again, one of the biggest investments here internally in our capacity building is investment in habitat biologists. So we currently have 9 of those habitat biologists. You've interacted with a lot of them on your tours. They're incredibly effective, both working with partners but also with our staff. We're proposing to build that out around the state, adding 16 new habitat biologists to ensure that every watershed district has an NRS3 and an NRS2. That'll allow us to be more engaged in proactive permitting, land use decisions, as well as in proactive restoration working with our partners. It's really important investments there. And I should say, associated with both of these, there's supervisory positions. That's why the FTE count is higher. So also part of the doing package is this investment in Working Lands and Wildlife Program. These are specialists that work with working lands producers, etc., to really get good things on the ground. An example we heard yesterday was Dominic here in that land area, who works with landowners to get good things, work with our partners. They're embedded within NRCS, and they just get great things done. So we want to continue to support that program. Likewise, public lands are a big component in Oregon, so we want to make sure that we have those similar types of positions that can work with our federal land managers to get those good things done on the ground and leverage federal dollars. There's so much to talk about here. We also wanted to invest in our partners OSP for a couple of reasons. One is around when we do this good work for habitat and restore it, we want to make sure that it stays that way. So there's, you may be aware that there's been over the years Oregon plan officers that are really out there ensuring that these habitat projects are staying in place, that everyone's kind of following the rules. And then also we're starting to think about how those positions might be used in urban environments to encourage stewardship and reduce conflicts as well. So we're still in conversation with OSP about how that might happen. Then we also recognize that there's a need to tell a story about this. There's such great work going on out there, and we want everyone to know about it. So there's investment in the comms capacity here in outreach for one FTE. This is something we also heard from partners. They want to see us telling the story. It's something we want to do really well too. So exciting investment there. And then while we're building this agency capacity, we also wanted to make sure money gets out on the ground as quick as possible. So you'll see a whole host of investments here. A couple I want to just call out. We plan to work with the Portland Metro and the Oregon Zoo to do a demonstration restoration project. Portland Metro, through a bond of their own, has been able to purchase several parcels of land surrounding the metro area. And they really be able to create these corridors for wildlife. They don't currently have funding to do the restoration side of things, so this will kickstart some of that for them. And working with the zoo and accessing their distribution network, we can tell the story of how that restoration really helps species, but also for
Guess we're hearing some feedback that someone's not muted. You can't tell who it is. Okay. Okay. But you can't tell if someone is not muted, right?
So we saw yesterday.
These guys all say they are. So.
And there was a question at the end about our legal here, and the answer was not currently, but look at food source. So, as part of the current leader action plan, we worked with Oregon University to develop a guidance plan for creating as opposed to the habitat being created for species. And this is really the demonstration project that's practice and shows people and have them occupy those areas. And then there's a whole list of other investments that we see talking about in the questions. So that's kind of building statewide capacity, some immediate on-the-ground investments. The other thing we want to call your attention to is that we wanted to make sure that there was capacity to do good things on the ground across the state. So we're proposing to invest $1.5 million in each ECO region with money across the state. And that would be money that's available to boost capacity for projects, multi markets in the state that have challenges. So if you think about the ECO region that we were in recently, there's just a lot of money now available, $1.5 million, and go towards the highest priority needs to get things done on the ground. That's capacity we as an agency haven't had previously, so it's really exciting. We could be doing things to run the it could be looking in Northeast Oregon on Lewis Woodpecker, where we're trying to understand migratory patterns and nesting strategies. It could be working on vegetal fencing in areas where these migratory corridors and swamp species can live. It could be investing in motor towers for tracking bats and birds, putting ADVs in basins. Could be doing eelgrass restoration on the Oregon coast. There's so many examples of how this funding could be spent. We're excited to dive into this with partners and think about where our highest priorities are and get some of that done. And then I want to step through like 3 areas of specific regional investments we're going to make or proposing to make through this plan. And one of the, for me, on the tour yesterday, when we were at High Point, just thinking about landscape scale, like it really drives the time when you see 360, you can see 50 miles either way to the distance. And you can actually see things on the ground, like we can see where treatments are happening. This is what we're trying to do through these investments here. And on the near shore, a pretty significant investment. What we're really trying to do is target building resilience of the Calvin Rocky near shore ecosystems, something that we heard from Candy this morning. To do that, we've got a few packages here. One is investment in coastline monitoring, California habitat. This will really increase our capacity to understand the status of these systems and the trends in them over time. It's a big increase in our capacity to do that. The second place that we're planning to invest is in this marine resource coordinator position. That is going to be ODF County's lead for working on sea otter restoration. They'll also implement again, a key position that's going to undertake a lot of work in restoring these kelp. And we also want to work on some social science, investing some money in social science associated with CLR reintroduction. There's a lot of steps that we have to go through to understand where we might be successful, where some of the concerns about impacts might be, and make sure the community is comfortable with this reintroduction so it can be successful. And then last place we want to invest there is some research with partnering with Oregon Aquarium and Orca, the Kelp Alliance, on doing some research and outreach associated with translocation of sea stuff. when we think about the kelp ecosystem, and one of the primary, there's a couple of things going on there. One is the warming ocean, but the other is the purple oceans. So when we think about the trophic ecosystem out there, sea stars and sea otters are two of the predators that were controlling those populations historically. And so we're coming at it from the kind of whole trophic ecosystem approach here, where we're investing in both monitoring and investing in potentially restoring some of these top-level predators that can control those systems and allow the kelp to flourish. So pretty exciting investments in the nearshore ecosystem. Klamath is another one we wanted to talk about. This one's really focused on targeted investments to sustain rare species. When you think about Oregon, when you think about endemic species and rare species, Klamath is one of the areas that comes to mind. Highest concentration of rare and endemic species in Oregon. Additionally, we're in the middle of the largest restoration project in the world currently, with the removal of the Klamath Dam, Mason dams, and the reintroduction of spring chinook, as well as the recolonization of fall chinook and cover steelhead. Really exciting times, and we just saw our first spring chinook come back here recently. Another reason to celebrate. We're proposing to make some key investments down there. One in partnering with the Oregon Zoo on Mazama Butte culture translocation. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mazama Butte, but it's having some challenges with crayfish in Crater Lake. The Oregon Zoo's been doing some phenomenal work to capture breeding, and they're about to embark on a translocation project on the Wizard Island here. We're looking to support some of that work. Klamath sucker is another species that's not doing so well. We're looking to partner with, again, tribe, other partners in the region, on supporting Klamath sucker conservation. And then additionally, we're working on a spring chinook reintroduction. The fish came back was from a hatchery production from a few years ago. That program doesn't have sufficient funding currently, and so we're looking to invest in that. And then as we think about the changes that are going to happen in that basin in terms of the plumbing and the restoration, there's going to be a really big need for screening and maintenance of those screens. So we're also proposing to invest in a position that can support irrigation districts, the landowners, and screening and maintaining those screens. And then last, an investment in bull trout. So the Klamath bull trout recovery unit has been heavily hit by fire recently, but there's also some good things going on there with recovery of population in Crater Lake. What we're proposing to do is invest in the partners' action plan down there and actually implement some of the projects that they've identified. So a lot of the investments going into Klamath that are intended to help these rare endemic species. So we're pretty excited about those. And then on ecoregion investments, talking about the ecoregions out east here. And this is really about targeted investments to build rangeland resilience. And the tour yesterday was just encapsulated a lot of what that work would look like. But it's really going to target a lot of small species. You can see here sagebrush sparrows, long lizard, Washington ground squirrel, pikelet. There's a whole range of small species that live in these habitats and could benefit from this work. So a couple of key investments we're proposing is we heard yesterday about the importance of partners and partnerships. We heard yesterday about the importance of knowing where to invest funding, where to prioritize it. We're looking to work with a party to do that across the entire eastern side of the state. So develop a unified plan with our partners and get everyone on the same page so we're all running in the same direction. Then we want to invest heavily in tackling annual invasive grasses. This would be funding that can be used to do projects at wide scale, like what we saw yesterday. You heard earlier this year, I think it was March, from ODA about this native seed strategy. Really critical to the work we're doing out east here. We heard yesterday about some of the work that's going on with native seed strategy. We want to invest in that program. And then similarly, virtual fencing. We want to help incentivize that. And in places where it's gonna benefit song species and improve connectivity. And then last, some investments in the rangeland monitoring and science partnerships. So again, we're really excited about these investments. We've had 2 tours now, Ontario last year, and then yesterday, where we've seen kind of the scope of the problem, but also some of the solutions that are coming out, and we're seeing success at landscape scale. And so this investment of close to $4.5 million is really going to provide additional resources on that. Pretty exciting. And then, of course, Ken's sitting here, so I got to put a plug in for central services. Now, in all seriousness, this doesn't happen if the agency doesn't have the support. You need people that can do the contracting to put all this money on the ground. You need HR that can support all these new staff. And you need accounting so all this money can go to the right places. So I just need to invest in some positions in the central services program. Also to support our Habitat Division and field operations, so East and West region and Habitat Division, proposing a position each there that can support the investments in those programs. And then we don't have to pay our bills with DAS, so we're proposing a small portion of this go to government service charges. And then general S&S, so that our staff in these offices have desks, computers, etc., and can maintain the offices. So that that's kind of wrapping up the proposals we have. There's a lot in there, and I didn't dive into a lot of detail on some of those things. It's a huge package, to be honest. And when you think about any other year, any one of those first 3 packages I talked about, wildlife stewardship, connectivity, or RCF, we would have been ecstatic to be proposing those. The fact that we're able to be in the position to propose this $45.7 million package is just outstanding testament to our partners and the broad coalition that came together. In terms of what we're hearing from partners, you're going to hear today, I'm sure, that it should be no surprise that this package looks the way it does, because we built it based on conversations with those partners. They wanted to see immediate investments in filling data gaps. They wanted to see us invest in capacity to increase our knowledge. They wanted to see us invest in those statewide specialists. They wanted to see us be able to engage with counties and federal agencies in planning. They wanted to see the ability for us to support them in the work they're doing as well, which you do see in those various investments. They wanted to see that we could support the new staff and the contract that we're going to use. And they wanted to see investments in our habitat biologists and to be able to put the ground running with investments. So everything you see in this package was built with that feedback in mind. So I'm going to turn it back to Ken to talk about the other packages, and then I'll just be here for questions.
Thanks, Sean, and not to not give some of these other packages there. You know, go a little quicker here. Some of these follow some of our more normal policy option package process. I'll just start with package 105, which is our shellfish population surveys policy option package. That utilizes license funds out of our restricted shellfish dedicated account. Repositioned $391,000, which and will expand shellfish surveys, conduct education and outreach. Again, for these policy option packages, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, these are where we really look and see where we have potential opportunities with revenue sources. Maybe it's partner funds from external sources, or our own license funds. This is one example where through that evaluation process, we recognize that we have a little bit of an ending balance within our shellfish sub-account and projected revenues that can support this type of initial investment. Package 106 is our Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative Outreach and Implementation. This package gives us expenditure limitation to expend $500,000 of other fund from private donations to implement strategic coordination, outreach, education, and implementation of the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative. Package 107 is our Hood Ecoregion Steelhead Monitoring Package. Packages for 3.17 full-time equivalents. When we see FTE, that means full-time equivalent. Could be that's 5 positions, a couple permanent and a couple seasonal, and that adds up to that FTE that's noted on the screen. About $628,000, and that's funded as contract dollars funded by the Hood River Watershed Group in the city of Portland to implement monitoring in the Hood ecoregion. Package 108 is our Springfield fish water. It's one position and utilizes $238,000 of other funds from the Eugene Water and Electric Board and federal fund from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to implement contract-funded actions in the McKenzie Basin, largely associated with the hydropower system there, trap and haul bull trout, sorting fish at Beaver Dam, and doing various actions throughout the McKenzie Basin. Package 109 is our invasive species prevention and detection package. It utilizes an existing position and some resources to create a new position. That's why it's just 0.17 FTE. It's actually a full-time position that is jamming together a bunch of different resources to do something different. It's largely self-funded, with just a little bit of balance needed from the federal side, $49,000 in federal fund from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and this will expand our capacity to prevent and manage invasive species and increases our outreach capabilities for this type of work. That section, I should have started with this. I was just ready to roll. So really, we've organized some of our policy option packages with some of that intentional building that we talked about at the beginning. Those are kind of our species resiliency packages. We also have a package around serving Oregonians, or serving all Oregonians, and then we have a suite of packages around sustainable infrastructure. I like things that fit neat, tidy in each one of those packages, and as you'll see, like a lot of these kind of hit all 3 of those at once, and so it's not the best representation there, but just want to mention that that's kind of the methodology we use to organize this and how we approach building these out. So the next one, really, serving Oregon, the Island Wildlife Area Marketing Program. This is hot off the presses for you all in April. This implements our seasonal Sauvie Island Wildlife Marketing Program. Really, the effort here is connecting Oregonians to the resource while also protecting the important resources there at Sauvie Island. Utilizes seasonal positions and contracted funding for to operate that seasonal limited entry parking permit program. Utilizes funds from the Sauvie Island beaches parking pass. Next, we'll move on to resilient infrastructure, and this is where I mentioned earlier in the presentation that there's a lot going on here. Package 111 is our hatchery resiliency infrastructure. This utilizes general obligation bonds, $30 million and 3 full-time equivalent employees to continue our strategic investments that are informed by our third-party assessment to increase the sustainability and resiliency of our Oregon's hatchery system. So, which remember in 25-27, we added a $20 million general obligation bond funded package for hatchery resiliency. That work is ongoing. This continues that strategic and intentional approach to addressing the challenges of our hatchery system. $30 million this go around. The 3 full-time employees are our engineering staff and project construction management staff. We have a small engineering section, and there's a lot going on here, right? In order to be successful, we need staff to be able to design and manage these projects. We're asking for these staff to be permanent. We've had asked in the past with our bond funding for temporary staff, and we said that we can't hire engineering staff at the temporary level because we just haven't been successful. So the goal here is to actually get 3 full-time positions that will implement these important projects, and again, it matches our strategy long-term. We're going to continue to chip away long-term at our hatchery infrastructure and our agency infrastructure needs staff. I don't note here Pop 112 or Pop 113, which are debt service pops. So how the general obligation bond funding pops work is we request bond funding when bonds are sold, and then we have debt service incorporated into our budget. The debt service is really paying back those the sale of those bonds over time. And so each one of those general obligation bond pops will have an associated debt service policy option package that will have general fund to pay off those bonds long term. So moving on to POPs 113 is our Deschutes Watershed Office construction and Central Point Office design, $11 million, again, general obligation bond. So, we could almost throw a rock to it from here, but we have property that we purchased a couple years back, with some prior funding. That will be the home of our future district's watershed office. Currently, we have an office in Bend, Pineville, Bend Annex, a Redmond office, and maybe a Redmond Annex, right? Like, we have a bunch of different offices all over here. Once our main office in Bend is old, needs a big upgrade, is no longer meeting, the needs of our staff. And this site will be in the new construction, once constructed, will be a new site that'll meet all of our needs, and it's gonna be great. And so for that, we're estimating $10 million, in general obligation bonds. We are right now, at the stage where we are designing that project. And so hopefully by the time we're done with the design, approved, we'll have the money and we can move forward with implementation. Also included this, as part of our strategy moving forward, again, I mentioned really the intentional approach at, addressing our agency infrastructure. Central Point office, down in Central Point office, down in Central Point, our road watershed district office, another one of these offices that are built in the fifties. It's an old house that is, we jammed 21 staff into it, is in dire need of repair. Our goal here is to get, funding for the design of the new office at that location, and then next planning in 2 years, hopefully I'll be here saying, in 2931, we want funding to actually do construction for that office. So setting us up for the future to continue those objectives. Moving on to top 115, climate hatchery capacity. We worked closely with the Yurok tribe to apply for a federal Bureau of Indian Affairs grant for the tune of $5 million to add capacity to our climate hatchery to support spring Chinook reintroduction efforts in the basin. We were successful. The federal grant was approved, and that money is going to go to the Yurok tribe. And we're going to work really closely with the Yurok tribe on implementing those actions on the ground to add capacity to the climate hatchery in support of those reintroduction efforts. So really cool stuff. Top 116, fish passage infrastructure. We've had similar policy option packages the past couple biennium where we're requesting the use of lottery revenue bonds. Lottery revenue bonds, very similar to general obligation bonds. The main difference, general obligation bonds need to be used on state-owned infrastructure. Lottery revenue bonds are used on infrastructure, but not necessarily state-owned. So here the goal would be to use those funds to fund high-priority fish passage infrastructure projects on the landscape. We had funding approved in the 25-27 biennium for lottery revenue bonds and those projects are ongoing. And this request is to continue those good efforts to get good work done on the ground. Okay, moving on. Top 117. So the department continues to hear from people both in support and opposition for the POP investing in sustainable hatchery capacity for the Umpqua Basin. Opposition is primarily associated with the portion of the POP that invests at Rock Creek Hatchery. But a couple things before I actually describe what the POP does. So the POP is based on ongoing work between the department and the Cow Creek tribe to advance a concept that was developed following the recent review of the state's hatchery system. The department did provide a report that outlined the concept and progress to date during the 2026 legislative session. And there remains many steps to this process. And we feel like this POP is really an important placeholder that allows the department to continue working with the tribe on the long-term solutions. So as it's currently written, the POP includes $71,190,000 of other fund, which is the insurance fund. So that insurance fund I keep mentioning to you every month, we utilize those insurance funds. And the remainder being made up of federal fund FEMA dollars. There's also a small amount, $1 million of other funds for operational dollars. Once the new investments are constructed, we need $1.1 million for staffing to operate. So what does that all fund? So that funding incorporates about a $20 million investment at Rock Creek Hatchery. It's a partial rebuild, not a full rebuild of Rock Creek Hatchery. The partial rebuild will focus on maintaining production for spring Chinook at the Rock Creek Hatchery. And so that investment would be about $20 million, current estimates, with the majority of that being insurance funds. The package also includes construction of a new facility in the South Umpqua, again, in partnership with the Cow Creek tribe. This hybrid option, having two locations, really increases our resilience, our product and production stability, partnerships, and lowers the construction costs. It's been 6 years since the fire in 2020. So we've had lots of conversations on this, lots of work goes into this, and there's still lots of steps. But this is really the solution that the department has worked on and come up with our partners and tribe that we feel like best to maintain the pre-fire production that existed at Rock Creek Hatchery in the quantities. This type of approach. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. And then last, we included one policy option package, 118, called capital construction non-bond eligible costs. This is $100,000 license funded. And I just walked through a bunch of different potential capital improvement projects. And one thing that we've noted as we've kind of been doing this for several years, and we're using general obligation bonds for capital improvement, is there's a bunch of costs associated with these that are not bond eligible. So as I mentioned, the bond has to go directly to capitalized expense. There's expenses with these projects like permitting, demolition of old sites, we have old sites with lead paint, asbestos, that, all those costs for construction are not bond eligible. So what's happening is our regions are kind of taking on those costs with their existing budgets. And it's causing some constraint. And so idea here is we just have a pot of funds as we think about these strategic investments that we can utilize that are non-bond eligible but construction adjacent, and this will relieve a little bit of pressure on the existing program budgets. Okay, started with process slide, end with process slide. So just we'll end here and say that this is one step in a long process. I mentioned this leading off. We're here today seeking approval from you all for the agency request budget. After today, really the next 2 months are going to be a bunch of final adjustments, working with our chief financial office and governor's natural resources office, putting together the large complex document that is our ARB. I think it's actually like 1,000 pages of stuff. It's everything, all the details, all the printouts, narratives, various reports. Like, it is a big, large object, so a lot of work over the next couple of months with our budget teams and our administrators. Once that's all compiled, we enter it into the state budget system, and that's gets submitted to CEO and the governor's office. And as I mentioned, the governor's budget, recommended budget is going to come out sometime before the legislative session. And of course, during the legislative session, the legislature will be working on the legislatively adopted budget, which will ultimately become our budget once it's passed through that process. A lot of work to get here, and a lot of work remains, but really good stuff. Last, we have a recommendation up on the screen, but a couple points to hit before we conclude. One is this is preliminary budget, right? So a lot of the things we talked about, we're still doing a little adjustments here. I think the numbers are pretty darn close, but like there could be a couple bucks here and there that adjust. And so the budget figures that you're packing on the screen might adjust a little bit here over the next couple of months as we're adjusting and working with DAS on various things. Additionally, there could be further instructions that are coming through this process. There could be further things we have to work on with the DAS financial office prior to submitting the budget for the governor at the end of August. So there could be some slight adjustments. We talked about some things that are still kind of in flux, EFA mitigation grant programs, other figure adjustments. So this is why we have the motion in your packet is kind of curated in this way, because we just want to make it clear that while we think this is really close and really good, there could be some minor adjustments that continue along the way over the next couple of months. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
And just to add to this notion, we know further instructions will be coming from the governor's office on some revenue shortfalls for the state. At the end of the day, the agency will put an agency requested budget consistent with whatever the governor's office tells us. So just want to make sure that we're really very clear and transparent with you that this is subject to change and you anticipate further instructions.
Thank you, that helps actually, yeah. Wow, what a report. So this question, and just before we start with that, these will be just a few few questions, commissioners, if you will, before we hear from a lot of people who want to testify. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for unbelievable presentation. What crossed my mind is not, the great abundance that we have today, but how this agency operated during a time of great scarcity. And so, we are really, really fortunate to have Director Colbert, who really helped pulling this agency out of a big hole not that long ago. And that is who we have in charge today to help us look at a time of abundance. And I just want to make that point, and Director Colbert, if you could just talk about that for a moment, what that was like and how you acted at that time. Because it's not always when we have abundance, it's how we handle our scarcity. And that is what gives me confidence in this agency being able to move forward in this time of abundance.
Thank you very much for the kind words, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde. And, you know, what I was saying, and we every time we bring on new employees, I do their welcome for their new employee orientation. And one of the things that we emphasize every single time we hire an employee is how seriously we take our fiscal responsibility. And you all know, and many people in this room know that, you know, for the lifespan of this agency, we have depended on hunters and gatherers and funds from those folks to essentially support conservation and all of the work of the agency in Oregon. And we do that based on the trust that they give us. And so, you know, during those tough times, we have to work through really hard conversations with our stakeholders about, you know, how we were going to manage costs and still try to provide for opportunity, ensure that we were sustaining species. And so now that we do have funds coming to the agency in these new ways, I think it's all the same premise. You know, we're still a lean, fighting machine. Even when you see the large dollar values that are being discussed here, we take it extremely seriously how we manage those dollars and how we're responding to our stakeholders and our partners on the ground. So we really don't do anything in a vacuum. There's just, you know, we go into legislative session, which is really how agency budgets are ultimately decided, is by the legislature. And we don't go into a single session without working closely with every single one of our partners so that they understand why we're proposing what we're proposing and how it supports our mission and the work that we're all doing together. So I hope that that's responsive to your question.
Another question, Commissioner Volk.
Thank you, Chair Wall. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate the level of detail. Just for clarity, keeping back to slide 7 at kind of a 10,000 foot level, we see the request budget, the difference between the former and now the current. Besides the TLT funding, there's a significant projection to increase federal funds. What are those? And are there, we're in a stage, sadly, where there's federal funding that's becoming increasingly unreliable. So if you could expound on that, I'd appreciate it.
Chair Wall, Commissioner Moldal. The increase in federal funds is almost entirely in package 117, which is our sustainable umpire hatchery capacity, and that's FEMA dollars. So a big portion of that, the lost Rock Creek hatchery, we're proposing to use Federal Emergency Management Association FEMA dollars to recover what was lost at that site. If you look at the cover sheet, the policy option packages, in front of all the areas, you can see like a breakdown by concept of like where those funds are. There's a little bit of federal fund with the sprinkling fish order and a little bit of federal fund with the AIS prevention policy option package. The bulk is all $1 million. And then there's a little bit of just inflation from our base programming and economic conditions that come with the federal fund. I think right now, again, it's all they estimate that like in our 117 packages, $53 million of uninstalled.
Commissioner Morrison.
Thanks, and I guess I just want to take a moment to again really commend the department on the amount of work that has gone into developing this budget proposal and tremendous opportunity as we're looking to apply the funds from 4134. And it's really evident to me how active you all were with reaching out to stakeholders and making sure that what we're putting forward here is in alignment with what folks were expecting as they were doing that work. And just really want to acknowledge that. So much to be excited about in these policy option packages as we're looking forward. And that results in a lot of questions, but maybe I'll just focus in on one, and I'll step away from the 4134 packages for a second and come to the 113 pot on the Deschutes office, just for my own knowledge building here. How does the department look at leasing versus owning our office facilities? And can you give a kind of a sense of where we are in that, in terms of percentages for office buildings leased versus owned? It's kind of a mundane question, I know, but it's interesting to me.
Chair Wall, Commissioner Morrison, great question. We have a large infrastructure across the state, 93 locations. I think the actual total of all our buildings is like 800, big footprint. I don't have any, I'm actually just going through a process right now with the Capital Planning Advisory Board that we'll have to submit as an agency as part of our budget that looks at planning for our facilities. I think out of all that, like we lease like 15 or 16 facilities. So by way of percentage, I don't know, 10, 15, 20%, somewhere in there. I can get back to you with exact numbers, but we do lease some of our facilities, and we own most of them. As far as strategy goes, it's interesting, if you look at like all the deeds for our offices throughout time, right, a lot of them are, it's a variety of things, things that we inherited. We have an office at an old farmhouse, we have, things like that. So over time, you accumulate, and kind of adapt to what's available to you. If we have an expansion, we have more needs, maybe that's what leases come in and whatnot. I wish I had to say like we had a better, like I know exactly what our strategy is over time, but I think it's, it's all just kind of come together where it is. Like moving forward now, I think, we are going to have a new building and property services division that's going to be focused on some of this strategic approach to managing our facilities. This question does come up of like, where do you invest your resources? Just like in our personal lives, buying a house versus renting, right? Like there's pros and cons. But yeah, we look at everything really closely and try to determine what's in our best interest, right? Like for the Deschutes one, right? We have this facility we own and all these little facilities that we don't own. And we had some money to purchase the site, and the approach there was, hey, it's going to be better off for us long term to purchase a site. It's going to house 50 staff. We're not going to have ongoing leasing costs that are very expensive. We're going to own that facility. Downside is there's deferred maintenance and all that comes into that. So I think it's a case by case scenario where we try to look at the pros and cons for what we need as an agency, and then also what's available to us.
Commissioner Morrison, if I could just add, we do, as we get to kind of each of these, first of all, we have our infrastructure prioritized routine at our agency in terms of like why these offices next. So we go through a prioritization there. But then, as we look at each location, we look at all of the different options. So for example, right now, we are updating our Clackamas office. And we did extensive research about whether it made more sense to lease versus rebuild. And in the end, it was most cost effective to rebuild at the existing location. And so, there's a lot of analysis that we do as we approach each one of these projects. But I will say that, for the most part, if you look at our headquarters building in Salem, it's a great example. We were leasing prior to moving the headquarters into that building, and we saved $1 million in biennium with owning our own headquarters versus what we were spending leasing. So, but it can vary, and we do that analysis on case by case.
appreciate that, and I appreciate that example. Chair Wall, may I ask one other question? So going then back to Pop 101 and some of the $4134, that no plan do framework, as you said, Joan, that's nothing new. It's, you know, it's been what we're following all the time. But just, I guess, to put a point on it, as we look at those additional diversity biologists in the no section, it's not like we're saying you can't do this. You just have to focus on knowing, right? So it's not, I guess I just want to emphasize that as we move forward, you know, as we develop our understanding and knowledge, so some of those folks will also be doing projects as well.
Yeah, Chair Wall, Commissioner Morrison, that's exactly right. Like, for the purposes of presentation and like putting things into buckets, we looked at like, what's the primary duties going to be here, but then there's a lot of crossover all throughout all of these positions, a lot of work.
Thank you. Real quick, I trying to figure out whether or not I asked this question before or after the testimony, but I'm just curious. With some of these funds, there's obviously an extreme level of detail. You know, I kept thinking like, okay, if I was given $60 million to spend in 2 years for my own, in my own world, like what level of detail can I get in with any kind of certainty? And it would be not very much. So I appreciate what you all have done here. It's certainly a lot of work. Example of just, you know, knowing it is somebody who works a lot on the ground in projects of bottlenecks, archaeology. Gosh, thank you for building that in. That is such a bottleneck. And so I see that level of detail. But my real question is like some of these things that I think we're going to hear about in public testimony, as far as like we have this money allocated within this bucket, but really there is some latitude going forward of how specifically that money is going to be spent, and taking into account, you know, government, governor office direction and things like that. I'm just curious, one, how that communication will go forward with public and stakeholders. Two, how it will come forward with the commission. You know, if we pass the recommended motion, obviously we're passing the fact that there is going to be some change, but what will come back as far as communication about how these dollars are truly spent, if at all. Yeah, maybe I'll stop there. Those are, and then I'll have maybe more questions later.
Yeah, Chair Wall, Commissioner Wolf-Priest. It's a really good question. We've really been on a sprint in this budget to build it. From the time the bill was signed to the time we had to submit these policy option packages to the government just for review, it was like a period of 2 weeks. So really intense conversations with our stakeholders and partners about like what should we go into this bill, where there should be some discretion for like later decisions, etc. And so we've been trying to hit these timelines, but there's a lot more work to do now that we've kind of got this foundation ready, right? Like there's like 1.5 million per acre region, for example, like our decisions that we made about where that's spent, and how our partners can be involved in that, on our fees, whatever. Those are all things that we have a year now to work on, to figure out before the budget is adopted next year in the legislature. So a lot of work being done today, but we know that there's places in this budget where there's still questions about implementation process, right? Those are things we've got to get to work out essentially. And we also heard from partners that we want to do it too. We want to tell the story of like how the investments we made on the ground, because that's how we ensure that the funding for animals was in the long run. That's how that story and seeing outcomes. So yeah, we feel an obligation to be telling that story. I'm sure we'll see hear from us in the future.
In many ways, you know, of course you'll have financial reports where we're telling you about kind of how it's going out the door. But I could just see this being, just a thread through the next, you know, biennium, whether it's our climate reports or our tours. You know, I think it's just, we're gonna be talking about this a lot with you, and how those dollars are making a difference on the ground. I would also say that this is the agency's requested budget. And while we'll have a year to kind of plan for these scenarios, if I'm honest with you, we're going to be on the defense for a year. Like, we have to get approval from the governor to get it into her budget. And then we will be working in the legislature to, try to convince the legislature that this is the right plan. So, we have a lot of work to do on that front. And we'll continue to lean on our stakeholders because again, once it gets in the legislature, that it's gonna be the same group that got this bill passed are gonna be the ones that are continuing to beat the drum on why this work is important and why this is good for Oregon. And so we got a lot of work.
Two quick questions. I'd like to take off, just add some, or ask something on that one as well, though. On the, it seems to me that early on, Commissioner Lappard talked about the leadership of Amy Patrick and Christy Kamal and Danielle Mosher in getting this through the legislature, for which it doesn't always happen that way to have a coalition so engaged and so effective. I completely agree with what you said, Vice Chair Hatfield Hyde. About the role of the director, Director Colbert in both scarcity in the past and now abundance, and how this agency has put this budget together. And what came out of that seems to me, that combination is confidence in the agency that you don't always get to see, and I think it's carried us a long way. And what you described, Sean, I think, in the ongoing engagement and having that broad stakeholder group in all of those discussions, it was an openness on the part of the agency that's to be admired, and it got us somewhere, and it was effective. So I think those are worth a lot. We'll come back to that later, but I just wanted to mention that combination is worth so much right now, and I know that we will be in that sort of position where we're defending for a long time. But we're going into it in a great position. So, and that's due to a lot of people that worked a lot over the last year. My quick questions are, in POP 101, the 1.5 million to each of the 9 ecoregions, it will happen that we will have the 1.1 or 1.5 to each ecoregion in addition to some of those immediate actions that you talked about, correct?
Yeah, Chair, well, that's correct, yeah. We're really proposing some initial targeted investments in those ecoregions, but the 1.5 is intended to be an enduring investment in those ecoregions.
Thank you, that's helpful. Then on POP 115, the work with the Yurok tribe, I have been making an assumption that the Yurok tribe applying for that grant was an outcome of the collaboration that we've been doing, the department has been doing with each of the tribes on these different issues. But I realize I should ask the question, is it an outcome of that collaboration, or is it a change in our relationship in this case?
Chair Wall, I think it's an outcome of that collaboration and hard work and with all the tribes down in the
And Chair Wall, just to add to that, it's partly a function of who's eligible for those funds as well. So the Yurok tribe was the eligible entity in this case.
But all of that work is absolutely consistent with our joint reintroduction plan that our agency and the Klamath tribe put together. So it really builds on that plan, and in this case, the Klamath tribes were not eligible, so the Yurok tribe was the applicant.
Thank you, that's helpful. That's it on my questions. I will go to public testimony. Thank you for a remarkable job of putting it together. We have, I believe, 20 people ready to give testimony. I really do ask, if you will, to stay within the 3 minutes, and we'll try to keep the timer on so you know where you are in that. The first 3 are Jeff Dose, James